this is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed human.
There's a difference between liking a house and actually getting it. Redfin is built to make up that difference and close the gap between finding and owning the home for you. Redfin agents close twice as many deals as other agents. So when you find a home you love, you're not a step behind when it comes to making an offer. That means less watching great homes disappear and more focus on the one you'll call home. Redfin helps turn saved listings into real addresses. Get started at redfin.com. Own the dream.
This is Jana Kramer from Wind Down with Jana Kramer. We talk a lot about cutting out toxicity in our lives, but what about our skincare? So many of these anti-aging companies hide hundreds of chemicals under the term fragrance, exposing us to harmful carcinogens that actually damage our skin. Foria Organics is completely different. They use natural Arctic ingredients like arnica that lock in moisture, boost collagen, and repair your skin's protective barrier, giving you a radiant natural glow at any age. Stop using harsh products that work against your skin instead of with it. Visit ForiaOrganics.com today.
Hi. It's Jill Winterstein, host of the Spirit Daughter podcast, where we talk about astrology, natal charts, and how to step into your most vibrant life. And today I'm talking with my dear friend, Krista Williams.
It can change you in the best way possible. Dance with the change, dance with the breakdowns.
The embodiment of Pisces intuition with Capricorn power moves.
So I'm like delusionally proud of my chart.
Listen to the Spirit Daughter podcast starting on February 24th on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your podcasts.
I'm Clayton Eckerd. In 2022, I was the lead of ABC's The Bachelor.
But here's the thing. Bachelor fans hated him.
If I could press a button and rewind it all, I would.
That's when his life took a disturbing turn. A one-night stand would end in a courtroom.
The media is here. This case has gone viral.
The dating contract.
Agree to date me, but I'm also suing you.
This is unlike anything I've ever seen before.
I'm Stephanie Young. Listen to Love Trapped on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hey everybody, Robert Evans here, and I wanted to let you know this is a compilation episode. So every episode of the week that just happened is here in one convenient and with somewhat less ads package for you to listen to in a long stretch if you want. If you've been listening to the episodes every day this week, there's going to be nothing new here for you, but you can make your own decisions. You crack open a Dr. Pepper. You know it'll only make you more thirsty in the long run, but you need some liquid in your mouth, and you're saving your remaining 15 gallons for a quick shower. The U-Haul is finally almost packed up. You may be able to make it down to San Francisco in time. Living in Redwood Valley has been nice the last few years. It's a beautiful place, but in August of 2022, the drought became too much. Late last year, California's new far-right governor lifted all water restrictions on farmers. This sparked a new statewide race to use what water was available before it ran out. Lake Mendocino was already low at the beginning of the year, and for the first time in your memory, it is now completely empty. San Francisco isn't doing great either, but it's much better off than where you live. The Russian River watershed relies almost entirely on rainfall and is isolated from state and federal aqueducts. After the governor lifted water restrictions, new almond and pot farms started sucking up groundwater, and by the end of the summer, they'd started pumping from the river to feed their thirsty crops. By mid-July, your town implemented a 25-gallon limit per person per day. That's about as much water as you go through during a 5-minute shower. The first thing you sacrificed was your garden, then you stopped flushing after you peed. These tweaks added up, though, and without water, the lifestyle you'd loved just stopped being possible. Your brother in San Francisco offered to let you move in with him. You weren't a fan of the big city, but at least you'd be able to shower again. And so you find yourself sipping an empty soda can and loading up your last few boxes into the U-Haul. You give your brother a quick call, saying you're all packed up and about to head out. He sounds worried and mentions something about his school letting new teachers go due to budget cuts. You can't really afford to think about that now. You just need to leave. Since you're all sweaty from loading the U-Haul the last few days, you decide to hop into the shower one last time. You knew it wouldn't last long, but you still seemed surprised when the water turned off after what felt like only 2 minutes. You quickly dry off and grab some clean clothes from your backpack and throw your damp towel into the passenger seat of the truck. You say goodbye to your home of 10 years and to your old succulent plants, and begin the 3-hour drive down to San Francisco. Water scarcity is a problem you're probably already familiar with, especially if you live in the Southwest. California has dealt with particularly brutal droughts over the last 20 years, and the Golden State's water problems could be about to get much, much worse. Because in just a few days, California might find itself helmed by a far-right governor with a near-religious hatred of water conservation. Electoral politics are not generally a big focus on this show, but what's going on in the state of California could have serious implications for many people, including those outside the West Coast. The ongoing recall campaign against Governor Gavin Newsom started out in June of 2020 with Republican politicians and activists unhappy with Newsom's handling of the pandemic. Newsom's opposition to President Trump's crackdown on undocumented immigrants also played a role. This is actually the fifth recall attempt against Newsom since he took office in 2019, but it's the first one to gain traction. It's fueled in part by Newsom's own hypocrisy and hubris. On November 6, 2020, the recall effort gained court approval for a signature-gathering extension, and later that night, Governor Newsom went to a birthday party for a Sacramento lobbyist and friend at French Laundry, a pricey Napa Valley restaurant. Soon after, photos surfaced of Newsom mingling maskless at the packed restaurant. He faced heavy criticism and apologized, but the damage was done. Republicans latched onto this as an opportunity to finally push the recall effort through. The recall petition, which had only 55,588 signatures on the day of the dinner, had nearly 500,000 a month after the November 6th incident. California's recall process is probably the least democratic one in the United States. Gathering signatures to authorize a recall election is a pretty standard thing, but California has among the lowest signature requirements in states that allow for the recall of an official. Most states require that the recall campaign must gather signatures equal to 25% of the votes cast in the last election. California requires just 12% for executive officials. The LA Times notes, quote, "That might have been a high bar in 1911, when the population was scattered across the 770-mile length of the state, but is it too low in 2021, when petitions for ballot measures are gathered en masse by paid staff in parking lots?" And that's not the only questionable aspect of California's recall process. On recall election day, voters will face two questions on the ballot. First, yes or no on whether to recall Governor Gavin Newsom from office. Second, and this one is technically optional, if so, who among the 46 candidates do you want to take his place? The first question is decided by a simple majority, just like other ballot measures. But when it comes to the second question, the percentage requirements change. The replacement candidate doesn't need more than 50% to win. So if more than 50% of the voters say yes on the recall question, Governor Newsom must step down, even if he has more overall support than any other individual challenger on the ballot. The replacement question is determined by who gets the most votes among the challengers on the ballot, which Newsom cannot be on. So 49.9% of the voters can back Mr. Newsom, and he can still lose to someone who is supported by only, say, 20% of the electorate, or even a smaller fraction. For other California elections, including special elections triggered by the death or resignation of an official, a candidate cannot win without the support of a majority of voters. If a candidate doesn't win over 50% outright, then the top two compete in a runoff election. Not the case for California's recall process. Organizers of the recall campaign submitted 2.1 million signatures by the March 17th filing deadline. 1,719,900 signatures were ultimately determined to have been valid, which was enough to trigger the recall. The deadline for casting your vote is September 14th. If the recall succeeds, the new governor would be in office for the remainder of Mr. Newsom's term, through January 2nd, 2023. And that leaves a lot of time for executive fuckery, especially considering the new frontrunner. Far-right radio talk show host and frequent Fox guest Larry Elder has emerged as the likely candidate to replace Newsom in the event the recall goes through. Elder, who is 69, jumped into the race relatively late in the game, during mid-July. At that time, it was more of a toss-up between Republican candidates Kevin Falconer, a former San Diego mayor, and businessman John Cox, who lost badly to Newsom in the 2018 gubernatorial election. Assemblyman Kevin Kiley and former athlete and media personality Caitlyn Jenner polled less well. But as Larry Elder entered the race, he almost immediately became the frontrunner in polls and raised lots of money from small donors. In the 3 weeks after he announced his campaign, he raised nearly $4.5 million, according to fundraising disclosures. That's more than every other Republican challenger, sans multimillionaire businessman John Cox, who's largely funding his own campaign. Elder has been a central figurehead of the right-wing radio talk show scene since the 90s, but has always been hesitant to run for public office, deeming the state of California ungovernable due to its liberal supermajority. But after talking with his friend and mentor, Dennis Prager, of the neo-fascist propaganda outlet PragerU, he figured it might be worth a shot and has expressed desire to use the emergency powers of the governor to push the state rightwards. Elder was born in Los Angeles, but moved to Cleveland to attend law school and opened his own firm in 1980. Elder's career began as a bit of an accident. He'd been invited on a Cleveland station as a guest. He did so well on air that, when the regular host went on vacation the following week, the program director asked Elder to fill in. Soon enough, Elder had his own weekly time slot on the Cleveland station. In the early 90s, a guest host from Los Angeles, Dennis Prager, visited Cleveland. Elder quickly impressed Prager with his on-air wit and talent, coupled with the uniqueness of a black man openly expressing extreme conservative views. Prager persuaded his home station, KABC in Los Angeles, to give Elder a shot. Quoting the LA Times, Elder returned to his hometown in 1994, 2 years after the civil unrest following the acquittal of the officers who beat Rodney King, and in the midst of the O.J. Simpson murder case. The program director at rival KFI, David G. Hall, felt KABC made a creative move, bringing on this guy from South Central who swung the other way on race. Almost from the beginning, the self-proclaimed sage from South Central whipped up a furor. He mixed sound bites from Representative Maxine Waters with a recording of a barking dog. He said blacks exaggerate the significance of racism, while women did the same in regards to sexism. For nearly 4 years, Elder has slapped many members of his own race in the face on radio, belittling them as whiners or losers, holding himself up as a model of African-American excellence. He's become a darling of white listeners who seem to almost gush when they telephone him on KABC Talk Radio. They are astonished to find a black man who not only isn't going to chastise them, but who also often agreed with them, a black man who declared that race was no longer a significant factor in American society. Elder also doesn't believe that racial profiling exists. This is despite telling the Times editorial board that police pulled him over between 75 and 100 times the first year he had his driver's license. Elder's regressive, provocative content angered many Angelenos, and black citizens of California led a boycott of advertisers on the show. It worked, and by the late 90s, the show had begun losing millions in ad revenue. But thanks to syndication, changing networks, podcasts, and TV appearances, Elder has been able to remain a central figure of the right-wing content sphere. He most recently starred in a video series for far-right propaganda organization and literal cult, the Epoch Times. According to Elder's campaign, the central recall issues he is focusing on are rampant crime, rising homelessness, out-of-control costs of living, water shortages, disastrous wildfires, rolling brownouts, and repressive COVID restrictions. For this show, we'll be focusing on the last three as they relate to the rapidly shifting and hostile climate. For the past 30 years, Elder has been a classic conservative climate denier. He had a whole section of his website devoted to debunking the Gore bull warming myth. Like Al Gore, bullshit, warming myth. Yeah, it's a bad pun. In a CNN interview prior to the 2008 election, Elder called global warming a false myth while disparaging and making fun of both John McCain and George W. Bush for discussing global warming as a serious issue. However, more recently, Elder has shifted his rhetoric around the climate. In an interview last month, he expressed belief that some warming is taking place, but by using old soft denialist talking points. Climate is always changing. Of course the climate's changing. The question is, what do we do about it? Do we deal with the effects of it, or do we force-feed a renewables-based economy down the throats of people, jacking up the price of energy, a disproportionate pain for poor people? But of course there's climate change, and the climate is getting warmer, and maybe about a degree or so in the last several years, and it will likely continue. He adds, what I don't believe in is climate change alarmism. He also said that he was not sure whether climate change is making wildfires worse. Quote, fires have gotten worse because the failure of this governor to engage in sensible fire suppression. Elder also blames California's rising housing costs on environmental extremists that jack up the cost of housing so that developers have to wait and get sued over and over again so that finally when the home is built, it's way more expensive than otherwise it would be without these environmental rules and regulations. Despite the slight backpedaling on climate for better media optics, his potential policies on the topic are just as horrendous as one might assume. In a recent video news conference, Elder declared that he would end the war on oil and gas and the attack on the logging industry while also reducing regulation on fracking and stopping California's growing efforts to expand wind and solar power, which he calls not very efficient. Elder did not mention climate change during his news conference. Water scarcity will be an increasingly severe concern for California in the coming years. Drought is already a major political talking point among voters and politicians, and it creates another rift between city folk and rural farmers. Farmers are having a harder time growing crops and feel threatened by water rationing. They're frustrated by the thought that the Democrats running cities will always prioritize pumping extra water into population-dense areas. Meanwhile, people in cities are concerned they will be forced to cut back on personal water use as almond farmers suck up tons of water to feed their droops. Just building more dams and water catchment systems or aquifers may seem like a solution, and if done properly, some of those things might help, but they can't make up for a lack of rainfall and snowmelt. Relying on river water has its own problems. Pulling too much from fresh water that flows through rivers allows for extra salt water to intrude from the bay and ocean. Salinity in the water negatively impacts local ecosystems and dirties what is supposed to be a freshwater source. Drought is simultaneously pushing migratory fish species like Chinook salmon and steelhead trout closer to the brink of extinction. Large numbers of fish are dying off because the rivers they rely on as spawning habitats are too warm or too low. Anxiety around water, droughts, and crops is among the issues driving some people to vote yes on the recall. A poll conducted last July by the Public Policy Institute of California found that residents cited drought and water supply as their top environmental concern, with about 25% calling it their chief concern, which makes it poll well above the related problems of wildfires, air pollution, and climate change. Republican politicians have been using anxiety around drought to drum up support for the recall by blaming the current situation on Newsom. The original recall petition against Newsom from early in 2020 warned that the governor, quote, seeks to impose additional burdens on our state, including rationing our water use. Last April, Governor Newsom did declare a drought emergency in 2 Northwest California counties. The order allowed state officials to restrict the amount of water diverted from the Russian River and authorized the relocation of fish stranded in drying puddles. The local county government asked residents to use no more than 50 gallons per day per person. But Newsom himself hasn't mandated water rationing for individual consumers, though he has asked Californians to voluntarily cut consumption by 15% and has suggested that statewide restrictions could be on the table if conditions worsen heading into the fall. Newsom and the Department of Water Resources as a whole do have ideas in mind for tackling this issue. Last year, Newsom authorized an $11 billion water infrastructure project, building a single 30-mile tunnel under the Sacramento-San Joaquin River Delta. The project, which has been discussed for years, is being pushed forward in hopes that it will protect the delta's existing wetland ecosystem and supply enough fresh, clean water to be diverted south for the rest of the state. But the tunnel concept has faced opposition, both locally and from conservation-minded folks. Some residents in the Delta region see it as just a water grab to meet the demands of Southern California and the agriculture industry, while the needs of those up north are being ignored. Ecologically focused critics say it could still increase salinity in the Delta and result in notable harm for the ecosystem. Newsom has more recently discussed other action and legislation to help mitigate the continued drought. Quoting the San Francisco Chronicle, in July, the governor signed a state budget that includes $5.1 billion over 4 years for new water infrastructure and drought preparation projects, including money to repair delivery canals, help farmers irrigate crops more efficiently, and start water recycling projects. Still, Newsom's recent actions have done little to quell anger among many farmers who say the state's failure to plan for another major drought just a few years after it exited the last one has put them on the brink of ruin. Ernest Buddy Mendez, a lifelong farmer in Fresno County and Republican county supervisor, said he was forced to let hundreds of acres where he used to grow cotton and wheat dry up this year after his allotment of river water was slashed to zero. He's relying on groundwater pumped from wells to keep his grove of almond trees alive. Mendez said he hasn't decided whom to support as a replacement candidate in the recall, just that he will vote hell yeah to remove Newsom. Let's face it, Newsom, damn is a 4-letter word, Mendez said. We haven't done anything in 20 years about building storage. California already does have one of the most extensive dam systems in the country, with nearly 1,500 reservoirs. Building new on-river dams would cost billions of dollars, if such efforts even survive legal challenges, which are all but guaranteed amid the struggle to save endangered fish species. There are not many areas left that would make sense or be sustainable to build a new, large reservoir. One other, more cost-effective solution could be to store more water collected during wet years in underground aquifers. One of the solutions to this problem is the same as the solution to a number of other climate-related problems, which is that we simply have to cut the amount of resources we're consuming, whether that means reducing our energy use or cutting down on wasteful water use. You can only build so many dams. The trend of California farmers growing thirstier crops has made an existing problem much worse. Today, the state produces 3 times as many acres of almonds as it did 25 years ago. With California most likely entering a third straight year of disappointing rainfall and snowmelt, anxiety around drought and increased severity of water restrictions won't get any better. And if the La Niña weather pattern hits the West Coast as it's poised to, that would mean the western U.S. will have a drier and hotter winter than average. Last August, water regulators made an unprecedented move to begin cracking down on water use in the sprawling Sacramento River and San Joaquin River watersheds, ordering 4,500 farmers, water districts, and other landowners, including the city of San Francisco, to stop drawing water from the basins of the river or face penalties of up to $10,000 a day. The city has enough water in its reservoirs to meet demand for at least a couple of years, and stored water is not affected by the state restrictions. Water agencies also can seek an exemption from curtailments if human health or safety are compromised. This does hit rural areas and agriculture the hardest because most cities have alternative supplies and stored water to tap into. Looking to attract voters, Larry Elder and other Republican challengers to Newsom have made it a recurring point to say that farmers should not have to endure such cuts. But they don't really give any prospective solutions to prevent rationing when water levels at reservoirs, lakes, and wells are all plummeting. Larry Elder said drought is not inevitable and said he supports building more reservoirs and dams to store runoff, but he has also voiced support for permitting desalination projects. Desalination devastates ocean life, costs much more than other alternatives, and uses tons of energy. Also, soon it will be made obsolete by increasing focus on water recycling. Explaining desalination quickly, ocean water is collected and run through pipes to remove the largest solids and then pumped through reverse osmosis filters to remove salt, while fish and other creatures die upon being sucked in or just from the force of the water flow. In a report studying a desalination plant in the early 2000s, it was found that on average over a 5-year period, 19.4 billion larvae were caught up at intakes, and about 2.7 million fish, along with marine mammals and sea turtles, were killed by intake equipment. For every gallon of drinking water, desalination leaves another gallon of salty brine behind. The plants then just mix that with 2 parts ocean water before pumping it back into the ocean. These measures can negatively impact the environment for this generation and generations to come. This type of resource extractive thinking reflects how we got into the problem in the first place. Battling over water allotments will only get us so far when dealing with lackluster rainfall. What can help is permaculture programs to help farmers learn ways to irrigate more effectively and cultivate healthier soils that retain water. Moving away from water-heavy crops like almonds and towards more sustainable and moisture-efficient crops must also be done if we want to stave off the worst effects. Putting Larry Elder in office won't make it rain, but it will put the state at least another year further behind on taking the kind of action necessary to ensure California remains habitable.
This is Jana Kramer from Wind Down with Jana Kramer. We talk a lot about cutting out toxicity in our lives, habits, jobs, relationships, but what about our skincare? So many of these anti-aging companies out there actually hide hundreds of chemicals under the term fragrance, exposing us to harmful carcinogens that actually break down your skin's protective barrier. Foria Organics is a Scandinavian skincare company that does things differently. They believe in healing skin at a microbial level, not just cheap fillers. They use wild harvested Arctic botanicals like arnica and sea buckthorn. These plants survive extremely harsh winters, making them super resilient and hyper-packed with nutrients. They work with your skin to lock in moisture, boost collagen, and even repair your skin barrier, giving your skin a healthy radiance you can literally see and feel. And it actually works. 92% of users reported seeing less wrinkles and fine lines in just 4 weeks. It's time to stop using harsh chemicals and switch to natural ingredients that give your skin what it needs most. Go and check out ForiaOrganics.com today and get 40% off your order.
In 2023, a story gripped the UK, evoking horror and disbelief.
The nurse who should have been in charge of caring for tiny babies is now the most prolific child killer in modern British history.
Everyone thought they knew how it ended. A verdict, a villain, a nurse named Lucy Letby.
Lucy Letby has been found guilty.
But what if we didn't get the whole story?
The moment you look at the whole picture, the case collapses.
I'm Amanda Knox, and in the new podcast, Doubt, the Case of Lucy Letby, we follow the evidence and hear from the people that lived it to ask what really happened when the world decided who Lucy Letby was.
No voicing of any skepticism or doubt. It'll cause so much harm at every single level of the British establishment of this is wrong.
Listen to Doubt, the Case of Lucy Letby on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hi, this is Jill Winterstein, host of the Spirit Daughter podcast, where we talk about astrology, natal charts, and how to step into your most vibrant life. And I just sat down with a Minnie Driver.
The Irish traveller said when I was 16, you're going to have a terrible time with men.
Actor, storyteller, and unapologetic Aquarian visionary. Aquarius is all about freedom loving and different perspectives. And I find a lot of people with strong placements in Aquarius are misunderstood. A Sun and Venus in Aquarius in her 7th house spark her unconventional approach to partnership.
He really has taught me to embrace people sleeping in different rooms, on different houses, in different places, but just an embracing of the isness of it all.
If you're navigating your own transformation or just want a chart side view into how a leading artist integrates astrology, creativity, and real life, this episode is a must listen. Listen to the Spirit Daughter podcast starting on February 24th on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your podcasts.
I'm Clayton Eckerd, and in 2022, I was the lead of ABC's The Bachelor.
Unfortunately, it didn't go according to plan. He became the first bachelor to ever have his final rose rejected. The internet turned on him.
If I could press a button and rewind it all, I would.
But what happened to Clayton after the show made even bigger headlines. It began as a one-night stand and ended in a courtroom, with Clayton at the center of a very strange paternity scandal.
The media is here. This case has gone viral.
The dating contract.
Agree to date me, but I'm also suing you.
Please search warrant.
This is unlike anything I've ever seen before.
I'm Stephanie Young. This is Love Trapped. This season, an epic battle of he said, she said, and the search for accountability in a sea of lies.
I have done nothing except get pregnant by the Bachelor!
Listen to Love Trapped on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
The last few months in San Francisco have been, honestly, better than you expected. Still hot and dry, but now that you're in fall, the heat has become manageable. In the Bay Area, at least. Staying with your brother has been actually really nice. The first few showers felt like luxury. Recently, he's had less of a good time. He found out he was getting laid off right before the school year started. He told me over 15,000 other teachers have been fired as a part of the governor's new Reform Schools program. The teachers' union is fighting it, but your brother isn't too optimistic regarding the outcome. He's been looking for new work, and meanwhile, you've gotten a shitty retail job to help with bills while you decide on what hospitals you want to apply to. You don't really miss your old EMS job in Redwood Valley. When you finally do get back into medical care, you really prefer something in a hospital or clinic setting, as opposed to the extra stress inherent in emergency services. The one chance you have had to use your medical skills since moving was during the fires last September and October. Back up north, they got really bad, and hundreds of thousands of people evacuated down south. Some old activist friends of yours from college made their own fire relief/mutual aid setup to give out clothes and food, and to help people displaced by the fires. You haven't talked much with your old college buddies in the past few years, but upon hearing of the relief effort, you happily offered up your skills to help with minor medical issues in a small medic tent they set up. It was the first time you've helped with anything related to protests or organizing since you moved up to Redwood Valley 10 years ago. It was oddly refreshing. Politics hasn't been a major part of your life since college, but speaking of politics, midterms are finally this month. The past year has felt like it stretched on forever. Your brother and his union buddies have been doing canvassing for a few progressive city council candidates that might actually get a shot at getting in. You haven't had time to adjust to San Francisco's local political scene, and honestly, you're not sure if you really care to. You have been keeping half an eye on the big state electoral races, though, which feels kind of weird. You know there's no way the Republican governor will get reelected. Not here in California. One thing that has gotten you worried is the weekly anti-election fraud rallies that have been happening in LA ever since October. The governor, surrounded by state troopers, has made it down himself a few times to drum up support from his fan base. And after the rallies, roving gangs of far-right extremists have gone around randomly attacking homeless encampments. You heard that just last week after a Sunday rally, 3 people had to be rushed to the emergency room. It's now just a week before Election Day. You're on the bus home from your job at the vintage clothing store when you receive a message on Signal from one of your old college mutual aid buddies you met up with again during the fire relief effort. The message reads, "Hey, are you free on Election Day?" You hadn't really thought about the day itself. You respond, "Maybe, nothing really planned yet." Your friend replies with a fat wall of text. "My affinity group and I are heading down to LA on Tuesday. There's a big Stop the Steal type rally happening, and word is lots of Proud Boys are going to show up. Comrades in LA have put out some calls for support, so my crew is going to go down and probably bring some medical stuff. If you want to come, we got an extra seat in the van." The thought of driving down to Los Angeles to deal with Proud Boys doesn't excite you, especially on an already stressful day. You think about it for a few minutes. Images of the people maimed during and after the recent rallies floods your mind. Your buddies know more about organizing and protests than you do, but you have more medical training. You decide you'll do it. You reply, "I'll come with," and pack some extra IFAKs and tourniquets. Among the issues Republican recall challengers have raised to attack Newsom, forest mismanagement has loomed large among the recent complaints. This type of thing harkens back to Trump's old habit of blaming the governor and not raking enough leaves for California's fiery plight. On a larger scale, this can be seen as part of an effort to push all the blame of wildfires off of oil, gas, and our transformation of the climate, and onto a simple lack of fire prevention measures. This narrative, of course, makes the fossil fuel industry more happy. The thing is, all of these things are contributing factors for California's wildfire problem. Climate change caused hotter temperatures and droughts makes fires easier to catch and spread, and inadequate forest management plus above-ground power lines do the same. Just because there are bad faith attacks on Newsom doesn't mean there aren't actual failures he's made as governor, especially in relation to the forests. An investigation from Cap Radio and California NPR, published last June, found out Newsom had grossly misrepresented and flat-out lied about his promises of new wildfire prevention efforts. Elements of the piece were of course used by Larry Elder and the right to push for support of the recall, but the article itself is a very fine piece of journalism. Back when Newsom first took office in January of 2019, one of the first things he did was sign an executive order overhauling how California handles wildfire prevention and forest management. The measures included removal of hazardous dead trees, vegetation clearing, creation of fuel breaks and community defensible spaces, and creation of ingress and egress corridors. In January 2020, a year after Newsom's initial announcement, the governor's office claimed in a press release that under the executive order's priority projects, 90,000 acres got treated with these fire prevention measures. But according to data obtained by Cap Radio and NPR, the actual number of acres treated by these priority projects was only 11,399, just 13% of the number Newsom boasted about. Quoting the piece by Cap Radio, quote, "Data shows Cal Fire's fuel reduction output dropped by half in 2020 to levels below Governor Jerry Brown's final year in office. At the same time, Newsom slashed roughly $150 million from Cal Fire's wildfire prevention budget. In 2020, 4.3 million acres burned, the most in California's recorded history. That was more than double the previous record set in 2018 when the Camp Fire destroyed the town of Paradise, ultimately killing 85 people. A decade ago, Cal Fire was trading a paltry 17,000 acres annually. That number has steadily climbed. Though Newsom misrepresented the number of acres treated in his priority projects, the overall amount of wildfire mitigation work carried out by Cal Fire spiked in his first year of office to 64,000 acres. But in 2020, fuel reduction totals plummeted to less than 32,000 acres, a roughly 50% drop, unquote. Multiple factors contributed to 2020's subpar fire prevention and reduction efforts. In 2019, the year with the largest number of acres treated in recent history, the state budget allotted for $355 million for wildfire prevention and resource management. But after the COVID-19 pandemic hit California in early 2020, Newsom cut the budget by 40%, down to $203 million. On top of the budget cuts, the fires themselves made prevention work more challenging. 2020's wildfire season started out early, which resulted in less time to do prescribed burns and thinnings because the same teams that are tasked with prevention and fuel reduction often also serve as firefighters once the fires break out. As of May 2021, CAL FIRE has treated over 23,000 acres throughout the year. This puts California on a trajectory better than last year's total, but not as high as the 60,000 plus acres treated in 2019. Newsom has been trying to make up for his missteps and gross exaggerations. Quoting the Cap Radio report again, quote, Newsom is trying to play catch-up. With the state enjoying an unexpected surplus, Newsom proposed $2 billion in spending on wildfires and emergency preparedness, with $1.2 billion going towards wildfire resiliency in the upcoming budget. Experts say the increase in prevention spending could help the state get closer to a less dangerous wildfire season over time. But they also expressed concern over whether the state will sustain that commitment for years to come. Unquote. Revelations about Newsom's and CAL FIRE's lies and lackluster forest management were quickly jumped on by Larry Elder and other Republican challengers as an easy way to attack Newsom and to move the conversation about wildfires away from climate change. Elder has said he has quote-unquote no idea why more prevention and reduction measures aren't being done, and when he becomes governor, he'll be, quote, implementing these commonsensical kinds of plans so that we can reduce the severity of these fires, unquote. Elder has given no concrete plans on what measures he'll be shooting to implement or any indication on how much money will be directed to prevent or fight fires. On the note of budgets, Elder has said that the more recent spending on wind and solar power has left, quote, less money for removing trees and putting power lines underground, the kind of things that would make these fires less intense, unquote. And he promises to drastically cut spending on renewables, while also investing more in oil and gas. To be clear, Newsom's upcoming budget contains billions for both fire prevention/fuel reduction and renewable energy such as wind and solar. Whoever ends up governing California is not only in charge of local politics, like governors in other states. What happens in California affects people across the country and even globally, whether that's wildfire smoke traveling across continents or changes to supply chains and industry rippling across the world. California is, after all, the world's 5th largest economy. There are also political ramifications that could affect the states as a whole if Elder gets in office. The Senate is currently a 50-50 split between Republicans and Democrats, with Vice President Kamala Harris getting the tie-breaking vote. One of California's senators is 88-year-old Dianne Feinstein, the oldest active senator. If she dies in office or has to step down due to medical reasons before her term is over, the governor of California gets to appoint her replacement. If Elder appoints a Republican, then the Senate will be back under GOP control. And given his connections to the far-right media sphere, the list of potentials that Elder could appoint is frightening. This is by no means inevitable, even if Elder gets into office. If he does, Feinstein does have the brief opportunity to step down and put a replacement in before the new governor is sworn into office. However, Feinstein has said she has no plans of doing so. Reports of her declining health have become only more common in recent years, but like many politicians and judges, she's not keen on stepping aside, even to possibly help prevent a disastrous outcome. Changes in the Senate are not required for horrible outcomes in the wake of an even brief Elder governorship. His anti-vax sentiments and plan to open up the state and remove basically all COVID restrictions will result in hospitals being pushed to max capacity. Elder has said he has plans to appoint education officials similar to former Secretary Betsy DeVos and judicial appointees like conservative Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas. Elder has stated his intention of declaring states of emergency and using executive orders to push through otherwise unpopular legislation. He has discussed plans to declare an education emergency in order to fire upwards of 21,000 quote-unquote bad teachers. Elder blames teacher unions for, quote, protecting bad teachers, and in a recent interview stated, quote, someone told me that between 5% and 7% of public school teachers need to be fired. An emergency declaration would give the power to get rid of bad teachers faster than the system allows. Once you did that, automatically education would improve overnight, unquote. Now, Elder has not specified who had advised him on teacher terminations or how he plans to weed out the so-called bad teachers out of the 300,000 in the school system. He's also touted plans to declare a homeless emergency, but his solutions have nothing to do with actually helping homeless people. His homeless emergency declaration would allow him to suspend the California Environmental Quality Act, the law requiring environmental review of building projects. Elder's stated goal is to unleash developers and contractors without environmental regulation, which he claims, quote, treats developers and contractors like criminals, unquote, and allows building projects to get suspended indefinitely, ultimately raising the cost of housing, in his opinion. One of the more frightening aspects of Larry Elder is his close ties to many far-right propagandists. He's done work for PragerU, Epoch Times, and has been a guest on Fox News at least 220 times in the past 5 years. In the last episode, we discussed his friendship with Dennis Prager. Also, Dave Rubin just recently campaigned for Elder at a recent rally, and a month and a half ago, Elder was on Candace Owens' show discussing how the descendants of slave owners deserve reparations for having their property, i.e. black people, stolen from them when the slaves were freed. Those are his words, not mine. What's probably most concerning is Elder's connection to Stephen Miller. In fact, we wouldn't have Stephen Miller if it were not for Larry Elder. Back in the late 90s, a conservative student from Santa Monica High School would call into Larry Elder's show to rant about his school's liberal culture. Reportedly, the student would go around demanding staff and fellow students regularly recite the Pledge of Allegiance. He railed against condom giveaways and called Spanish language announcements, quote, a crutch preventing Spanish speakers from standing on their own, unquote. Young Californians calling into Elder's show and agreeing with him wasn't very common, and Elder ate it up. He loved talking with the student so much that he let the kid on basically any time he wanted a platform to rant and rave. You know where this is going. That student was Stephen Miller. According to Miller, he appeared on Elder's show 69 times throughout his time in high school and university, and calls Elder, quote, the one true guide I've always had, unquote. Miller's appearances on Elder's radio show made him a recognizable figure in the larger conservative media world, helping him connect with Steve Bannon and eventually President Trump. By extension, Elder was Stephen Miller's on-ramp to the White House. In an email to Miller in 2016, Elder told him, quote, I hope to live to see the day when you become president. When media has brought up his friendship with Stephen Miller, Elder tries very quickly to change the subject. When pushed on the topic in a recent interview, Elder shot back with, quote, why would you bring up Stephen Miller? I'm just wondering what the agenda here is. What's the point? Am I somehow, what, a Nazi? A fascist? Unquote. I think that says enough. The reason we haven't discussed the other candidates in the recall election is because, at this point, if Newsom is recalled, it's absolutely certain that Elder will be the one to succeed him. He has a 20-point lead ahead of other challengers, but that lead is still only a tiny fraction of the total electorate, which demonstrates the part of the problem in California's recall process. There are other Republican challengers with concerning pasts and beliefs. Lots of anti-mask, anti-trans, anti-vax, total disbelief in climate change, people spouting QAnon-originated conspiracy claims, advocating the lie that the presidential election was stolen, and there's even a Democrat challenger that plans to use the National Guard to round up all homeless people and put them in concentration camps. But Elder himself shares a lot of those views, and uses the fact that he's black as a shield for criticism against his racist and nationalist policies and ideas. We haven't even mentioned that last month, Elder's ex-fiancée came out and said that Elder was extremely abusive and had threatened her with a loaded gun. In early August, polls were showing pretty much neck and neck for the first question on the ballot, yes or no on the recall itself. A Survey USA poll from that time even had 40% of respondents vote no on the recall and 51% vote yes to remove Newsom. Throughout August and September, results started to flip the other direction as ads against the recall hit the airwaves and internet. The latest Survey USA poll has 54% voting no on the recall and 41% voting yes. Other polls hover around the same 10 to 15 point lead for Newsom staying in office. Now, with polls not going the way Elder and the GOP would like, we're starting to see a new, yet familiar narrative being prepared.
On my website, electelder.com, we have a voter integrity project. We have lawyers all set up, all ready to go to file lawsuits in a timely fashion. The reason the lawsuits did not work in the 2020 election, we know what happened there, is because the lawsuits were filed too late and many of them were dismissed on procedural grounds. Courts don't like to overturn an election. So when you hear of anything suspicious, and we've heard a lot of things that have been suspicious so far, go to electelder.com. We're going to sick our lawyers on them, file lawsuits right away. They're going to cheat, we know that. But I'll tell you what, so many people are angry about the crime, about the homelessness, about the way he shut down this state, about the fact that 1/3 of all small businesses, many of them are owned by Black and brown and Asian American people that they care about the declining quality of schools, about the fact that people are leaving, rolling brownouts, lack of water. So many people are angry. The number of people that are going to vote to recall this man is going to be so overwhelming so that even when they cheat, they're still going to lose.
That's Larry Elder saying that if he doesn't win, that means the election must have been stolen. Fox News has been promoting the same idea the past month. All of it is in the vein of the Stop the Steal movement post the 2020 presidential election, culminating with the attempted insurrection on January 6th. Here's Elder again on Fox News in early September.
But you're right, I am concerned about voter fraud, and that's why I'm asking people to go to electelder.com. That's my website. We have a voter integrity project set up with a bunch of lawyers ready to file lawsuits if anybody sees anything suspicious.
Big 2020 election fraud conspiracy proponent and former House Speaker Newt Gingrich was one of the first people to chime in to stoke disinformation about the recall election.
And I think this may well be the most rigged statewide election we've seen probably in at least a half century. And I think people should look carefully at this because there's pretty good evidence that if Newsom is in a straight, honest count, he has a good chance of losing. But if they can stuff every ballot box in California and they can cheat in every way possible.
And of course, this type of propaganda has made it onto the most watched cable news show on air, Tucker Carlson.
California does not get the credit it deserves for the corruption that's endemic there. It's a one-party state and they act like it. And you got to have concerns about whether this recall election will be free and fair. Are you concerned?
Well, of course I'm concerned, Tucker. I'm involved in election integrity efforts throughout the United States, and I'm also a member of the Republican National Committee. So we have a team of lawyers that is ready to deploy throughout the state here, and we are monitoring things every single day. Just a couple of hours ago, I filed a lawsuit to intervene in a challenge to the constitutionality of the recall statute because, frankly, I don't trust the Secretary of State or the Attorney General, who are both appointed by the governor, to defend him in this regard. And so we are going to be jumping on every potential opportunity to do that and fight back against the Democrats. Of course, they are playing fast and loose. We've seen some very alarming scenes of 300 ballots bundled together in the car of a person with a gun and some drugs. And so we are definitely looking into all of these issues. But Tucker, ultimately, it's going to come down to how much do people want a change in California? And I can tell you, even living in my latte-sipping, avocado toast eating, Lululemon-wearing neighborhood in San Francisco, people are fed up with the crime, the drugs, the homelessness, the intermittent electricity, and everything else that is wrong with California. So people want to change here.
It's just not working. And this really is a test of whether our system works. I mean, can people get better leadership? That's kind of the question. Will there be election observers on the scene so the rest of us can know this was fair?
Well, 100%. The problem in California is that the voting doesn't just take place on election day like it would in a normal place. It's taking place now on a rolling basis through mail-in voting. It's 100% mail-in ballots this time around. And it is going to take place for 30 days after the election if it's close, because they have 30 days to count the vote. That's 60 days of voting. And of course, a lot of shenanigans can occur and ballots can disappear. So we are going to be observing it very closely and demanding accountability and filing lawsuits wherever we need to hold the Democrats accountable, because we cannot trust them.
Yeah, I hope so. People want to believe the system works, that it's real, that they have power, that their vote matters. So I appreciate what you're doing. Harmeet Dillon, thank you.
A lot of what's said in that last clip is either extremely misrepresented or just flat out lies. Those 300 ballots found in a car were actually part of a larger mail theft thing not related to the election at all. Voters have received new ballots. And for this election, just like the last one, Californians have the option to vote in person, to mail in ballots, or deliver them in a drop box. The deadline to drop off, mail, or place your vote is September 14th. Counting cannot start till the 14th either, and like every election, there will be observers throughout the entire counting process. Obviously, this isn't the first time conservative media has hyped up election fraud, the last presidential election being the biggest instance to date. But what is concerning here is that they're setting up a template to use for all future elections whenever Republicans lose. Here's a Fox clip from September 7th.
The only thing that will save Gavin Newsom is voter fraud. So as they say, stay woke, pay attention to the voter fraud going on in California, because it's going to have big consequences not only for that state, but for upcoming elections.
It's safe to assume that stop-the-steal-esque strategies will be used almost every time a Republican loses in an election going forward. We've seen exactly what this type of rhetoric and propaganda leads to, and it ends in blood. There were multiple attacks on state capitals during the Stop the Steal rallies prior to January 6th. In some places, like Salem, Oregon, they succeeded in getting inside the Capitol. Even if Newsom gets to stay in office, there will still be many problems. Election conspiracies and the possibility of violence like January 6th just being one. We haven't wanted to righteously defend Newsom here. He's a politician and inept in many ways. He deserves plenty of criticism, especially on the issues of climate change. But the criticism levied at Newsom from the likes of Elder and the GOP are based on bigotry, nationalism, and climate denial. Newsom should be our punching bag, not theirs.
This is Jana Kramer from Wind Down with Jana Kramer. We talk a lot about cutting out toxicity in our lives, habits, jobs, relationships, but what about our skincare? So many of these anti-aging companies out there actually hide hundreds of chemicals under the term fragrance, exposing us to harmful carcinogens that actually break down your skin's protective barrier. Foria Organics is a Scandinavian skincare company that does things differently. They believe in healing skin at a microbial level, not just cheap fillers. They use wild harvested Arctic botanicals like arnica and sea buckthorn. These plants survive extremely harsh winters, making them super resilient and hyper-packed with nutrients. They work with your skin to lock in moisture, boost collagen, and even repair your skin barrier, giving your skin a healthy radiance you can literally see and feel. And it actually works. 92% of users reported seeing less wrinkles and fine lines in just 4 weeks. It's time to stop using harsh chemicals and switch to natural ingredients that give your skin what it needs most. Go and check out ForiaOrganics.com today and get 40% off your order.
Hi, this is Jo Winterstein, host of the Spirit Daughter podcast, where we talk about astrology, natal charts, and how to step into your most vibrant life. And I just sat down with a Minnie Driver.
The Irish traveller said when I was 16, you're going to have a terrible time with men.
Actor, storyteller, and unapologetic Aquarian visionary. Aquarius is all about freedom-loving and different perspectives, and I find a lot of people with strong placements in Aquarius are misunderstood. A Sun and Venus in Aquarius in her 7th house spark her unconventional approach to partnership.
He really has taught me to embrace people sleeping in different rooms, on different houses, in different places, but just an embracing of the isness of it all.
If you're navigating your own transformation or just want a chart-side view into how a leading artist integrates astrology, creativity, and real life, this episode is a must listen. Listen to the Spirit Daughter podcast starting on February 24th on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your podcasts.
In 2023, a story gripped the UK, evoking horror and disbelief.
The nurse who should have been in charge of caring for tiny babies is now the most prolific child killer in modern British history.
Everyone thought they knew how it ended. A verdict, a villain, a nurse named Lucy Letby.
Lucy Letby has been found guilty.
But what if we didn't get the whole story?
The moment you look at the whole picture, the case collapses.
I'm Amanda Knox, and in the new podcast, Doubt, the Case of Lucy Letby, we follow the evidence and hear from the people that lived it to ask what really happened when the world decided who Lucy Letby was.
No voicing of any skepticism or doubt.
It'll cause so much harm at every single level of the British establishment of this is wrong.
Listen to Doubt, the Case of Lucy Letby on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
I'm Clayton Echard, and in 2022, I was the lead of ABC's The Bachelor.
Unfortunately, it didn't go according to plan. He became the first Bachelor to ever have his final rose rejected. The internet turned on him.
If I could press a button and rewind it all, I would.
But what happened to Clayton after the show made even bigger headlines. It began as a one-night stand and ended in a courtroom, with Clayton at the center of a very strange paternity scandal.
The media is here. This case has gone viral.
The dating contract.
Agree to date me, but I'm also suing you.
Please search warrant.
This is unlike anything I've ever seen before.
I'm Stephanie Young. This is Love Trapped. This season, an epic battle of he said, she said, and the search for accountability in a sea of lies.
I have done nothing except get pregnant by the Bachelor!
Listen to Love Trapped on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Greetings and welcome to It Could Happen Here. I'm Garrison Davis. I am a researcher and writer on the podcast team. Today we have a roundtable discussion with a group of researchers who look into extremism and political violence, usually stemming from far-right propagandists and people in that kind of whole sphere. So we have a discussion relating to climate change and all these other things that I was able to record with these fine people. It's split up into two sections. So part 1 is coming out today. Part 2 is coming out tomorrow. Highly recommend you listen to both. Maybe even back-to-back at some point, because it does really give a nice rounded out view of what we were talking about. So without further ado, here is my discussion with, like, I don't know, well, not a dozen, but a large amount of terrorism researchers, as we are all in the woods, as you will soon find out. Welcome to It Could Happen Here, the daily show. I am Garrison Davis, and I am recording in an undisclosed location in the woods. Me and a few internet colleagues are all hiding from the world for a week to reset our poisoned brains. But I'm going to slightly repoison us here for about an hour to have a discussion about climate change and terrorism, because we have a group of people here who will research the bad thing online a lot. So I'm going to try to take advantage of having this unique group of people all in one location to have this nice discussion for you guys. But yeah, specifically we want to talk about how each of us as a quote unquote expert in certain fields see climate change impacting extremism and terrorism in the next few decades. And yes, we are recording in the forest, so if you hear sounds like we're in the forest, that's because we are. You guys already know me, or you probably do, but we're gonna go around in a circle, probably starting on my left, introducing the people, and just give a brief bio, however detailed you want to get into.
Okay. My name's Matt Taylor. I'm a journalist and researcher focusing on cults, conspiracy theories, and extremism, and today is my birthday.
Happy birthday, Matt, in the past.
My name's Theo. I am a journalist and researcher as well. I mostly focus on the American militia movement and paramilitary groups.
I'm Toothpick. I'm with Theo, Matt, Emmy, and Big Newhouse, who isn't here on Terrorism Bad.
That's a podcast, by the way.
Self-plug. My research and reporting focuses mainly on conspiracy theories and where that overlaps with political extremism, and with a focus on connections between U.S. and Europe, especially Germany.
I'm Peter Smith. I'm a journalist with the Canadian Anti-Hate Network and the host of the Unusual Show podcast.
I'm Lily, and I focus on extremism and counterterrorism and data analysis.
And I'm Emmy. I do digital propaganda and rhetoric.
That is our little crew. Let's see. What the first thing we kind of want to talk about, I'm guessing, is how we see small, because the podcast is more about smaller local collapses. We don't, there's not going to be one big collapse. We're going to see small things start to fall apart, and how we see when small things fall apart, what do we see filling in those gaps. Specifically, I think this will tie into the militia movement a lot in a lot of ways. You guys can start sprouting off your knowledge.
Yeah, so one of the things that I've been thinking of and following, and I don't know if this has made as much of an impact in U.S. media, but in the last month, parts of Germany and the Netherlands experienced really bad flooding that literally wiped out some villages and some towns. And one of the things that we've seen in Germany is, far-right groups. There isn't really a militia movement because of the laws there, but far-right groups rushing in and collecting aid and going for photo ops in those catastrophe areas. And what that does make me think of, and maybe Theo can talk more about this, is we've seen similar stuff in the U.S. with the militia movement marking themselves as, emergency preparedness, or marking themselves in that way, and positioning themselves where, when, the government is unable to respond, that these groups are able to come in, and also using that for their messaging and for their rhetoric.
Yeah, so, that is something that you see in the U.S. The biggest example, Garrison and I talked about this earlier, but during the wildfires in Oregon last year, you saw checkpoints being established by militia groups, whether already formed militia groups or kind of impromptu armed bands. And you also see that as a big marketing thing. I know a lot of the Virginia-based militias that I follow went out to Tennessee 1 or 2 years ago when the tornadoes happened.
Yeah, I was going to mention that.
Yeah, they did a bunch of kind of aid and photo ops.
Yeah, so just not to dox myself, but I'm from Nashville, and beginning of 2020 in March, right before coronavirus.
Someone just dropped a toy gun. Great job, guys.
Yeah, so in the beginning of March of last year, right before COVID hit Nashville, we had a huge tornado go through Nashville itself and wipe out 2 different neighborhoods and then a rural town right outside of Nashville. But you saw a lot of, so the community comes together in this really nice display of mutual aid to do all the cleanup, basically, before any official crews could get there. But with that, you also saw these far-right groups coming in for photo ops, and it normalizes their presence in heavily impacted areas, and it was not ideal.
Yeah, a lot of the American militia movement, especially the modern kind of post-2008 3%er strain of it, is predicated on this idea of a complete breakdown of order or a loss of civil order, however you conceive of that. And these like climate disasters that are going to hit areas are going to kind of provide a self-fulfilling prophecy for these people to step in and say like, oh no, you need some sort of armed force. You need some sort of group of people to keep order and to keep law in whatever way they conceive of that.
I do think it's interesting you guys talking about kind of like the photo op thing that they do, because when the wildfires happened in Oregon, all of the actual like relief work was done by anti-fascists. Like we, like people in Portland, we set up, these massive camps to help, all these like, much more conservative people who had to evacuate their homes, and they were all getting fed, and all their clothes and stuff were coming from anti-fascists. And all the right did was do the armed checkpoints thing. I find it interesting that like in the South, where there's less anti-fascists, like compared to like Portland, right? How some of those groups actually do some of the relief effort. And that's definitely not the case up here in the West Coast.
Oh yeah, I mean, last year I remember a few county level militias that I follow in Virginia were like seriously doing relief work. Like they were gathering food, they were taking out to places affected by flooding in North Carolina, by tornadoes in Tennessee. It's not, I wouldn't go so far as to call it mutual aid because it lacks the kind of ideological framework for that, but they are providing some sort of infrastructure.
I think mutual aid for their guys.
With less of like the theory side of mutual aid, but like, and I'm sure there's someone else who can speak more on this, but like from my perspective, growing up in a super weird church, I see this interacting. I see this like combining with local churches a lot as well. I'm not sure there's anyone else here who could say something more intelligently than me about how like religion will combine with these like kind of militia efforts.
Well, a lot of like eco extremists, like on the far right, on the very, very fringe far right, can start to like be very esoteric about their, belief in climate change, and they start to sort of frame it as like a reason for the collapse, that we need collapse, or attacking infrastructure, like for the purpose of somehow saving the planet, even though it's really not going to get them anywhere. We have to do a lot of our own work on the planet. We can't just destroy everything and see if it works out.
Yeah, we can definitely bring up accelerationists and accelerationism as an overarching thing that is, not just it not to be like horseshoe theory about it, but accelerationism pops up in a whole lot of areas, including areas of the left where it becomes very unuseful, and it can lead to like a lot of wasted time and some destructive tendencies.
I mean, I think that point kind of also provides an interesting through line between more mainstream militias and like the really esoteric brands of eco-fascism or ecologically based extremism, is that like they're both very influenced by like colonial schools of thought. Like eco-fascism and all that is kind of predicated on this idea of like terra nullius. Like, there is this perfect, empty, wild land that we can have.
Manifest destiny.
Exactly. And, like, so much of the ideas of order and, like, peacekeeping that you find within more mainstream militia movements come from this exact same type of thinking, where it's like a colonial order that you need to keep.
Yeah, I know there's a lot of people on the left who are in, like, the kind of, like, green, like eco-socialist or like green anarchist kind of strains who get very frustrated when people talk about eco-fascism, which I can understand, because no one really means the same thing when they talk about it. Sometimes they just mean any quote-unquote terrorism that has like an environmental purpose. Some people, when they think of eco-fascism, they think of like overpopulation. There's a lot of different things they mean by it, but I know we've all had talks about like what we personally view as like eco-fascism, because it's not just eco-extremism. Like eco-extremism does not equal fascism. Like there's a whole bunch of eco-extremists who are very anti-fascist, and there is some who kind of bridge the gap. Like ITS has some more fascist tendencies, but I would not accurately call them fascist based on the type of stuff they do, the type of writing they do. They do not check all of the boxes. But then we do have people who I would accurately describe as eco-fascists who've done mass shootings, who have eco-fascist stuff either in like the writing that they like or their own manifestos. They bring up enough points. It's like, yeah, you kind of fall into this broad category. Does someone here want to give
their personal definition of ecofascism. This isn't not necessarily exactly what we use for the pod, but I'm interested to hear. There's a lot of people with various backgrounds. Everyone has their own specialized knowledge. What kind of, when people say that, what do you kind of put into that category?
People who believe in like this organic law and like natural order, and they believe that like there is a natural hierarchy ingrained in everything, and they think that generally like if we return to like some kind of primitive society or like, you know, they'll assume that like everything has its own structure, and that there's going to be people who rise to the top, people who just, you know, don't belong in that kind of society. It's going to be really damaging for like the elderly, for disabled people, and they just sort of see it as like survival of the fittest. And I think that's like a much more eco-fascist point of view rather than like a more green anarchist point of view where things would sort of even out rather than become a hierarchical.
Yeah, I think
caste
hierarchy
system.
is an important part of that, and how we, you know, there is like a lot of green anarchists who are focusing on like making their own medication for you know, people with diabetes and stuff, and that's kind of stuff that is like really interesting to look at and stuff that we should absolutely pursue, because we'll become less reliant on supply chains, and we don't really see eco-fascists doing that. we do not see them focusing on making medication for people.
Oh no.
Maybe I can kind of set some people up to say more stuff if I say this real quickly, but one of the things that I always, or that is a red flag for me is just, you know, bringing in these very traditional discussions of gender roles and relating that to the environment.
Yeah.
Any of our rhetoric people.
Can you give an example?
I mean, we don't need to say names of specific, like, writers or people, but there's definitely
A way in which to like describe like the gender roles.
Sure, yeah. Stop playing with the toy gun. Oh my god.
Just like establishing, and it can be kind of like an older left thing too, but establishing, you know, ecological discussions within framework of traditional gender roles, and kind of like what is expected of people based on their sex.
Yeah, this is the dark side of cottagecore.
Yes.
That's one way to put it.
Yeah, Emmy, you want to get in here?
Oh boy, yeah.
Emmy likes cottagecore.
I love cottagecore.
I like parts of cottagecore, just not when it intersects with a certain straight up politics.
Oh, right. Well,
like queer cottagecore is extremely cute.
Sure. Until
you're not queer, and listen, yeah.
Sometimes they still are. Now, here's the thing: when we're dealing with like traditional gender role stuff, it's a really like slippery slope into more aggressive strains of thought.
Yeah.
So when we're talking about, you know, the idea of the class.
Stop playing with the toy gun. I will throw
are
you out
gonna
of
get
this.
the ATF.
I will throw you out of
It's
this
my
podcast.
birthday. I don't want that.
We will turn this podcast
Turn it
around.
podcast. It's Matt's birthday, you ass.
Toothpick apologizing.
Yeah. Okay.
Have fun editing.
Continue editing.
Yeah, rip to the editor. I wouldn't know what that's like.
All this stays in.
So, good. So, when they're talking about the collapse, and they want, you know, they think the rot of modernity will be gone, society will be ended. They can you know, rebuild from the ground up, smaller communities, and they can build the society they want, which is largely ethno-nationalist.
Yeah.
It's not great. Yeah. The idea is that there will be this super traditional family structure. You're going to have your this combined strong warrior, also homesteading man, and your cool trad wife.
Yeah.
Who never ages above 30 in this society.
No.
Like,
That's a high range.
Doesn't age above 25.
I'm being generous here, assuming that at least like some of these people have a little bit of like pre-planning, but they don't.
They don't.
And they step on each other a lot, right? Because they have this whole plan for this society free of industry, and they can't stop posting about it on the internet,
which is pretty funny.
Which is really funny, right? Like they're not good at it. Yeah, they're like way too addicted to posting to like actually commit to like the true off the grid trad life.
At least 10K was off the grid.
We don't gotta hand it to him.
You gotta hand it.
We don't gotta hand it to him. We don't gotta hand it to him.
You gotta hand it.
You do.
You under no circumstances gotta hand it.
Pod is divided on how much we gotta hand it to 10K.
The official stance of terrorism bad is that terrorism is bad.
Why don't we just bring them on?
It is kind of a concern when they do end up when they stop posting. I mean, it's a concern when they're posting, but it's kind of more concerning when
you would
see
rather
the
them just
anti-root
keep
groups,
posting
like,
sometimes.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the same as like looking at a kid that wants to be a firefighter or something. Like they're just talking. They're not going to do it.
But you see some of them doing it, and when they're doing the thing,
the lifestyle influencer version of fascism.
Yeah.
Do you think that it's going to affect kind of like laws about living off grid and laws about like for normal people who just want to get the fuck out? Like,
I actually just read something about this. There is some guy who'd been living off grid in Pennsylvania for like 30 years, and I don't remember the details of this, and we don't have internet out here.
Old guy?
Yeah, it was an old guy.
Like, burned his house down?
Yeah, he's in jail now. He's probably going to be in jail for the rest of his life, and I think part of whether it comes from the left or the right, as people kind of start to try to build resiliency within communities for disasters that are coming and start to seek ways of living that do not rely on supply chains and do not rely on the state will strike back against that as a consolidation of power. Because the more that people move away from it, whether on the left or right, the less power the state has.
I mean, and
utilizing counterterrorism is an excuse to do so. Yeah, because they're giving them reasons.
And it's not going to get enforced equally. I'm sure the government's gonna focus on certain people doing this and be slightly more okay with other people doing it.
It will.
I would like to talk about Canada a little bit because specifically, climate change affecting Canada is going to be slightly different in most of it compared to the States. Because I've been having my waist deep in climate science books for most of 2021, and Canada's going to probably see economic boosts, and the state's probably just going to get actually stronger because of how. Same thing with Russia. Both Canada and Russia are going to get more economically powerful under climate change because of how much more crops are going to get moved up. Give me your thoughts on Canada, because Canada's my backup plan. As soon as stuff gets too spicy in the States, I'm taking my Canadian passport and hiding in the woods. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, it's interesting to hear you guys talk about American militia culture, because we definitely, in our rhetoric and propaganda that we see in Canada, it gets borrowed a lot, the talking points from the States, like the concepts. But what we don't have are these strong, organized militia groups. We had 3%ers for a while, and who still exist, but they were big about being off-grid. Like, they were the ones who weren't posting for a long time. And it seems like, as much as all these people are still around, they've largely deflated down.
Because Canada's made some efforts to call them terrorists, right?
Right. Very recently, we designated them as a terrorist organization.
Yeah.
Which doesn't carry a criminal charge, but if you do something involved with them, you send them money. Like, there are consequences to that, legal enhancements.
Okay.
But our kind of militia culture focuses on the illegitimacy of the state. That Canada is founded, it's very kind of soft-sit type rhetoric, but that Canada's establishment, its rules, and especially with all the public health measures, it's this growing kind of tide of thought in both the prairies and largely out west.
Yeah. I grew up in Saskatchewan. Most of my family's in Alberta. I know when I keep a soft eye on some Canadian hate groups just because I'm Canadian. Most of them pop up around Alberta. Where do you see this stuff kind of like happening? Like, do you see any of this on the East Coast? If so, is it smaller, or is this mostly on like a West Coast Canada thing?
Well, that conspiratorial thought we've seen kind of across the country. Like on the East Coast, just recently we had people setting up their own version of checkpoints as like a protest against the public health measures.
Okay, yeah.
And like the whole eastern part of Canada is in its own bubble.
Yes.
Right now. But yeah, you had this like conspiracy-based movement forming these actual checkpoints. And then the main part of it, though, is probably going to be out west.
Okay.
Like, that is where these ideas are the most popular, the most popular.
That makes sense.
Where mainstream politicians are moving towards, amplifying these type of talking points.
Yeah, do you see that, like, is that a mostly Alberta thing?
It's a mostly, like, prairies, Alberta,
Prairies,
like
okay.
the farmland. The interesting part is, though, when you talk about groups, is like in Canada, groups are an urban phenomenon for the most part.
Okay.
Most of our organization takes place around the city centers.
And that is very different from the States. With the States, it's usually the opposite. There's always exceptions of where people live, but generally we see it as more of a rural thing where the groups organize. Whereas cities are more like liberal, and that's where like the anti-fascist groups are based.
But it's kind of these little ideological pockets that exist all over, and certainly that sentiment is probably shared. But the need to mobilize seems to mostly focus on the urban centers, and then we never have our groups providing any kind of aid to people. That's just, or even checkpoints. Like that's beyond these like very recent protest movements.
I know there has been more forest fires around BC, around western Alberta. How do you see the government's response to these types of things right now? I know Canada's in a particular situation with the Liberals having minority control. And the Canadian parliamentary system is probably confusing to a lot of Americans if they don't understand it already. But yeah, what do you see on that front? Because I know Justin both Trudeau and Biden talk the talk around like pipelines and stuff, but then do the complete opposite. How do you kind of see this kind of stuff working right now for like on the climate side of things?
Well, yeah, our reaction to the firefighters, reaction to the wildfires. The government response is always looked down on, like it's always looked at poorly. But none of these people are taking this as an opportunity to kind of change minds, do PR. There's much less reaction to it. Most, like the West, also there's this incredible feeling of alienation because of the way that our government is set up.
Yeah.
They have substantially less voting power.
Yeah, the same way in the states, how there's southern states or states in the Midwest who feel like they don't really have any power politically. Same thing for almost the entire west coast of Canada, everything from like Manitoba to Alberta and parts of BC. Everyone is very frustrated at the federales and how they really don't have control for what's happening. Like people on the East Coast are controlling what our pipelines or what our mines are doing, and that's not fair to our workers. Because it does suck when a mine closes and then everyone in a small town is out of business. Like the part where I grew up in Canada, all my family around them, used to be in bustling small towns that are basically all now ghost towns because stuff closed. People had to move to either like Calgary, Edmonton, Regina. Don't laugh. So all these specific things. We see pockets of this. We see pockets. Jesus. We see pockets of this in like the Midwest and the States, definitely.
I think it also is like manifest destiny shit because like
there's a lot of
a lot of it started with people kind of moving outward to try and gain more land and make their borders larger and like live further out to like try and obtain more territory. And with the like Canadian big surge in like Indigenous rights and the big focus and shift to like sort of give them land back or something. I'm not exactly clear on what the Canadian stances are on that. What?
Oh, just like, we have a big movement from Indigenous populations to...
They seem very like dichotomous, like...
Well, there's so many different bands and tribes and different types of nations. We have unceded territory, and the dynamics with which the government is supposed to deal with and has agreed to deal with and actually does deal with them is all vastly different. But yeah, that idea of this focus on these particular issues, like Indigenous issues, even our attempts to, have a greener economy, for a place that for a long time and still is an extraction economy.
Yes.
How does that affect
It's an oil company with healthcare. Yeah.
More like extremist far right groups who want to move out that way for the purpose of organizing, and you also have the Indigenous focus within the Liberal government. So, how do those two groups, do you think, interact?
The general conception is that the push for Indigenous rights, especially on the farther right, is for the disenfranchisement of white Europeans. It is... and then, you do have this Western exodus, where we have very popular figures who are moving further west because there are these stronger ideas of sovereignty I forget what exactly it was polling, but when the Western exit or Wexit movement started, there was a significant amount of popular, or at least like not strong support, but like existing support.
There was a large amount of support. Yeah, absolutely.
It'll be interesting to see what happens, though. Talking about collapse, like in these small towns, in like cloistered communities, they already feel cut off from the government and not represented. And then if you have a breakdown of infrastructure, that'll create.
Like, why do we even have them in the first place if they're not helping us?
Exactly.
Which is true, which is like a real thing to think about, but their solutions are wildly different than the actual solutions to help people.
Right.
And we've already seen how this plays out in the past as well, with places where the infrastructure starts to break down, and then people who have weapons kind of become the authority, just based on the fact that they have more power. Yeah.
So one of the things that I follow is a lot of kind of like the more, let's characterize it as boomer-esque conspiracy theories, especially with anti-vax, anti-public health measures type thing. And one of the things that really is noticeable to me is how much more sovereign citizen stuff is creeping up into those areas. And especially, there are two really big examples of, if there's an anti-vax protest in your city, it's probably one of these two networks that both come from Europe, that I'm not going to name right now. And those two networks also, love to organize over the messaging app Telegram. And Telegram is, tell me if I'm stepping in it, Emmy. Telegram is where, so much of this ideology, this far-right ideology, is able to cross-mix and commingle.
Yeah.
We
talk about Telegram enough in the pod.
Okay, cool.
But people are familiar.
You haven't stepped in it yet. Keep going.
Yeah.
Like adjacent to stepping, but it's fine.
Yeah. So I mean, my biggest framework, and I talk about this a lot, is Telegram as kind of this technological embodiment of the cultic milieu, because there is basically no enforcement, close to no enforcement on Telegram, and so. These more malicious actors know that, and they know that they can find an audience who's interested in, opposing the mainstream conspiratorial thought in these kind of like boomers on Telegram and conspiracy groups. And there are, malicious actors planning to go in and win these people over. And, a lot of these malicious actors are younger people who don't have those resources, but they know that they can win over these people who do have resources, who own land, who have savings, to kind of like fund that movement.
Oh, I was just going to say, I do think that the cultic milieu is like a really important heuristic for these kind of collapse scenarios, because the question of what happens when kind of infrastructure and any sort of political guidance falls away is governed a lot by that. And like this idea that there are these ideas floating around in our society, and once people have nothing else to turn to, these malicious actors will bring this stuff in. And to put it simply, then we're pretty fucked.
Yeah, Telegram also has recently started to crack down on people, and because of that, you have this really interesting dichotomy of people who are saying like this means like get ready, get prepared, go off grid, get guns, and you also have on the other end people who are saying create alt tech platforms and like create more like self encryption and like. I'm trying not to step in it now.
Yeah. No, I'm with you.
But to be able to speak more peer-to-peer resources.
And that wraps up part 1 of the Terrorism Roundtable discussion. Thanks so much for listening. You can find us at Happen Here Pod and Cool Zone Media on all of the socials. You can find me at Hungry Bowtie. And you can follow a decent amount of the researchers on their podcast at Terrorism Bad the podcast. I think it's just at Terrorism Bad. Anyway, thanks for listening to part 1. Part 2 drops tomorrow. Stay tuned.
This is Jana Kramer from Wind Down with Jana Kramer. We talk a lot about cutting out toxicity in our lives, habits, jobs, relationships, but what about our skincare? So many of these anti-aging companies out there actually hide hundreds of chemicals under the term fragrance, exposing us to harmful carcinogens that actually break down your skin's protective barrier. Foria Organics is a Scandinavian skincare company that does things differently. They believe in healing skin at a microbial level, not just cheap fillers. They use wild harvested Arctic botanicals like arnica and sea buckthorn. These plants survive extremely harsh winters, making them super resilient and hyper packed with nutrients. They work with your skin to lock in moisture, boost collagen, and even repair your skin barrier, giving your skin a healthy radiance you can literally see and feel. And it actually works. 92% of users reported seeing less wrinkles and fine lines in just 4 weeks. It's time to stop using harsh chemicals and switch to natural ingredients that give your skin what it needs most. Go and check out ForiaOrganics.com today and get 40% off your order.
In 2023, a story gripped the UK, evoking horror and disbelief.
The nurse who should have been in charge of caring for tiny babies is now the most prolific child killer in modern British history.
Everyone thought they knew how it ended. A verdict, a villain, a nurse named Lucy Letby.
Lucy Letby has been found guilty.
But what if we didn't get the whole story?
The moment you look at the whole picture, the case collapses.
I'm Amanda Knox, and in the new podcast, Doubt, the Case of Lucy Letby, we follow the evidence and hear from the people that lived it to ask what really happened when the world decided who Lucy Letby was.
No voicing of any skepticism or doubt.
It'll cause so much harm at every single level of the British establishment of this is wrong.
Listen to Doubt, the Case of Lucy Letby on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hi, this is Jo Winterstein, host of the Spirit Daughter podcast, where we talk about astrology, natal charts, and how to step into your most vibrant life. And I just sat down with a Minnie Driver.
The Irish traveller said when I was 16, you're going to have a terrible time with men.
Actor, storyteller, and unapologetic Aquarian visionary. Aquarius is all about freedom loving and different perspectives. And I find a lot of people with strong placements in Aquarius are misunderstood. A Sun and Venus in Aquarius in her 7th house spark her unconventional approach to partnership.
He really has taught me to embrace people sleeping in different rooms, on different houses, in different places, but just an embracing of the isness of it all.
If you're navigating your own transformation or just want a chart side view into how a leading artist integrates astrology, creativity, and real life, this episode is a must listen. Listen to the Spirit Daughter podcast starting on February 24th on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your podcasts.
I'm Clayton Eckerd, and in 2022, I was the lead of ABC's The Bachelor.
Unfortunately, it didn't go according to plan. He became the first Bachelor to ever have his final rose rejected. The internet turned on him.
If I could press a button and rewind it all, I would.
But what happened to Clayton after the show made even bigger headlines. It began as a one-night stand and ended in a courtroom, with Clayton at the center of a very strange paternity scandal.
The media is here. This case has gone viral.
The dating contract.
Agree to date me, but I'm also suing you.
Police search warrant.
This is unlike anything I've ever seen before.
I'm Stephanie Young. This is Love Trapped. This season, an epic battle of he said, she said, and the search for accountability in a sea of lies.
I have done nothing except get pregnant by the Bachelor!
Listen to Love Trapped on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome to It Could Happen Here. I'm Garrison Davis. This is part 2 of our terrorism roundtable discussion. If you haven't listened to part 1 already, I would recommend you scroll back, listen to the previous episode, and then continue on from here so you have kind of context to what exactly we're talking about. Anyway, this is part 2 of our discussion in the woods. I hope you enjoy.
Something that was talked about earlier this year after January 6th was should the government ban Telegram? Right, that was the thing, and there's a lot of arguments are like, no, absolutely not. And does anyone want to speak on that? Because if I want to talk about the government's response to these things, that's a very government-y thing to do. Be like, oh, people are organizing on this platform, get rid of the platform, problem gone. Yeah, and that's not how that works. Emmy, do you want to talk on that a little bit?
Sure. So getting rid of the platform doesn't necessarily help, especially when it's something that is important, such as encrypted communication, which is something that more people than just Nazis need.
Yes.
And that resource should not be cut off. And there's also kind of a bad precedent to be set if the government is deciding which forms of speech it needs to have complete access to. I don't love that. The other thing is that if we nuke Telegram, right, they don't disappear. They form new networks in other places.
There.
They are still there.
And then they have to do more things in person.
Right.
They're still there. They're just harder to monitor.
And they're hard to track.
Telegram is nice.
People are absolutely correct when they say deplatforming works, because it works for the platform. And a lot of people just want that. A lot of people just don't want to see Nazi shit, and they're fine with, deplatforming. They say this works, and they have data to back up that it does work. But it works for the platform, but the people still exist. People are still boosting their own shit. And when they bring up building their own alt-tech platforms,
it only works if you get there early.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And there is elements that, deplatforming is a wider thing, can work especially for, in-person stuff. But, for the sort of thing you're mentioning, yes, it is definitely not that cut and dry.
And Telegram's really interesting because it is kind of this middle space between social media and just a messaging app.
Yeah.
And the thing about it, too, is that anybody can look at these, the public channels.
Yes, exactly.
So without saying anything in the chat. So people could be kind of completely invisible. Nobody knows that they're there.Ey're watching this stuff, and they're still getting the same messaging. They're still getting the same dates for protests. They're still, organizing, but they can be sort of just subscribe to a channel and...
You don't even need to be subscribed. You can just know the name.
Just looking into it and getting that flow of information without ever having formal organizing, so to speak.
And it's
really hard to say that these people planned this, because there's a lot of plausible deniability that anybody was involved.
There's so much easy hyperlinking between groups and channels and everything, so it's so easy for someone to move between ideology and to go from kind of the base level shit into the much deeper stuff. Extremely quick.
Very quick, yeah.
Extremely quick. Well, that's the thing that is
by
good.
Design.
The thing that's good for them about Telegram is that you have all of the people that are vulnerable to, let's say, new ideas in one place.
Yeah, that's the big thing. You get recruitment.
Exactly. If you're trying to plan a collapse, you're going to need a lot more people than the numbers that the people who want a collapse actually have. So the easiest way to kind of move things along is to start inserting their ideas in their discourses and kind of altering the vibe of certain digital environments manually until they have what we can kindly call cannon fodder.
Yeah.
Yep. Or even starting their own and saying, this is a MAGA platform, and it's actually just, a bunch of accelerationists who made it. And they made it to recruit them.
Yeah, we definitely saw attempts of this with, QAnon, of people who are way more accelerationist trying to use QAnon people as cannon fodder.
Extremely, yes.
It was successful. It wasn't just attempts.
And they did it, and QAnon people died.
Well, that, and then also you've got the idea of the Boogaloo, right? That's been co-opted to try to appeal to leftists. And there's a really good article by Left Coast Right Watch that goes into one of those chats, and they're basically really try to push these ideas of, really try to push talking points like Black Lives Matter and all this. We want to get these protesters on our side. And then you also have some blatant white supremacist groups who are also using the Boogaloo to appeal.
And how much of that too is how much of that is sort of real, genuine, I am not racist, I believe in Black Lives Matter, I want to be part of this, even though I'm a Boogaloo, or how much of it also is kind of reminiscent of what we were talking about yesterday, and I also don't want to step in it, but with the idea from Manson of Helter Skelter and causing that race war, it's what they would do is try and frame black people for it and say this was
Yeah, exactly.
The
and so how much of it is saying this is Black Lives Matter, and they want people to see that after they do a boo.
The Boogaloo group that showed up in Portland in July of 2020 when the protests against the feds were happening, they showed up and were all like, yeah, we're here to support Black Lives Matter and stand against the federal government and stuff. And they had some very suspicious patches that it took me about a year to figure out what they were, and it's like this accelerationist, like, it ties into a whole bunch of like eco-fascist propaganda stuff.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's like they're saying these things while they have these very obscure patches. And yeah, this is an important reason why we need people who are not very smart, like I will say Jimmy Dore, who gives these people platforms, are some of the worst and are going to cause a lot of problems because they have no idea what they're doing, or they know what they're doing and they're just bad.
Yeah, and like that Boogaloo thing kind of serves a twofold purpose in that you can bring people who self-identify as leftists into the movement, but you also have a really good scapegoat for like actual action. Like that was a big thing that we saw in Minneapolis when things first popped off and like precinct was getting burned down, and suddenly people on the internet start losing their minds about the umbrella guy.
Umbrella guy
at the auto
the dumbest
zone.
shit. Yeah.
And there was a guy who was indicted. He was a Boogaloo boy who was indicted for like headline said burning down the precinct. He fired a weapon.
He fired a gun on like near the wall.
Exactly. And so that at the same time takes away agency from left-wing movements.
Yes.
And the state's able to be like, look, see, it's
okay to crack down on them because they're all, wild white supremacists.
Or even just from any autonomous movement that forms with the people in a community that we wouldn't necessarily refer to as leftists, just pissed off people. I mean, that's what we saw in every single, every big city where it's like the young kids who are fucking pissed off and are going to go smash it. And it's like saying all of this is people from outside of the town, where it's like, I know
outside agitators.
Yeah, it's a tale as old as time. Like, outside agitator has been used since before the civil rights.
It's a very old state
Old
talking
thing.
point.
Yep.
Yeah.
What were you going to say, Matt?
Yeah, I was going to say also, I mean, it's somewhat related to that. We were talking about using like QAnon as cannon fodder.
Yeah.
And it also ties into the Sovsit conversation we were having. So my research, I focus on Christian identity, this white supremacist ideology, and how it's grown since the 90s until now through like the internet and all that fun stuff. This whole point they've been pushing lately is to, like, with Christian identity, the whole thing is they are preparing for the apocalypse, which they call the tribulations, and they see modern CI folks see the Boogaloo as like the tribulation that's coming. So what they're trying to do is go off grid and really try to like establish this new land for like to protect their kids and everything from like pollution and all that shit, but also to be away from the collapse and be able to survive it. And then while they're doing all that, like prepping homesteads and like compounds and stuff, they're also like pushing election fraud conspiracies and all that on like QAnon and the MAGA crowd.
Not because they believe it.
Not because they don't believe it. They know it's bullshit, but they can use it to accelerate collapse.
Just like January 6th.
Yeah, so exactly. Like, there were groups when Joe Biden won the presidency or won the election, whatever. Some groups being like, really try to push this theory, this conspiracy about election fraud. Even if you don't believe in it, just push it because that helps our cause.
Exactly.
And that's something to be really mindful of. To forgot where else I was going with that.
A lot of them don't mean what they say. They'll say things that'll push other people to do something that they don't necessarily want to do, and that's a lot of like during January 6th, so much excitement because they could see that the QAnon crowd were actually mobilizing.
Yeah.
And so they said to them, like, to themselves, like, get them mobilizing for the white race, get them mobilizing for, our cause. And they've really successfully been able to infiltrate that and be able to get some people on board with some of it.
Yeah.
Just based on using their rhetoric.
Yeah. I know I talked about this on our podcast, but you could see it. Like, I reported on January 6th in person, and, like, you could watch it happen. Someone with a skull mask on, or a Proud Boy, or an Oath Keeper would literally come back from the police line, grab a group of people, yell something at them about QAnon or the storm's upon us, and throw them up to that riot line.
The New York
until they
Times
got
did a
through.
really good visual investigation of
Yes.
how those
Yeah.
extremist groups used MAGA people and QAnon people as their foot soldiers.
The QAA folk, QAA did a really good breakdown on their J6 episode.
QAnon Anonymous podcast.
Yep.
Yeah.
But it's also not to link everything to Christian identity, which I have a tendency to do, but it's very ideologically similar to QAnon, like from a Christianity point of view. Like QAnon is like so close to the edge of Christian identity that it's very scary. Actually, I talked about it on Jake Hanrahan's Q Clearance podcast, but there's also like not only trying to accelerate things through them, but also trying to recruit them through these like very, very similar talking points about like the synagogue of Satan and all that.
Saying that
nonsense.
Christian identity is an entry point for some of them. Some of them bring it up as
Yeah.
an entry point into further like accelerationist Nazi shit, but like they will start with Christian identity because they think that it's more packageable to people who already believe in QAnon.
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, like Will was saying, a lot of this comes from these kind of boomer conspiracies and anti-vax groups, and you're not going to be able to get, Mimon Pap into like Wotanism or something like that.
Well, if you try hard enough,
you
sure you
can,
could.
sure. But like Christianity is something that's palatable. It's something that's normal to them, and as you can kind of slowly tweak it through QAnon, you can get them to this much more extreme place.
And when we talk about Christian identity, I think we should like maybe Matt, you could define it.
Christian identity, it's this radical offshoot of Christianity that sees all white people as the true Israelites from the Bible. And they also think Jewish people are all literally the spawn of Satan. There's this really dumb theory they came up with and like kind of rewrote the whole Bible off of called, can I name it? Is that okay?
Yeah, you can.
Okay. Dual seed line theory, where they say, like the story, if you know about like Adam and Eve and all that, they had Cain and Abel.
Yes.
Right, so they see Cain was the offspring of Eve and the devil, and he's literally the spawn of Satan, and then he intermingled with all these races that were there before Adam and Eve and created this demonic race, and it's really, really fucking dumb.
But it's still here.
It is. Yeah. It's been here for a hot minute.
And it's probably going to keep going.
It's going to get worse. Calling it now. It's going to get worse.
It's going to get worse.
Yeah, but and the whole thing is they essentially like worship like a Nazi Jesus. They see Jesus only was really only talking to the white race, and that Christianity and like God only is able to be perceived by the white race. And
before you start laughing at these people, because yes, it does sound very silly, keep in mind that these are extremely dangerous.
I mean, you had
right. This is the one problem with QAnon when liberals just start laughing about how crazy it is, and then they're so surprised at January 6th. We're like, no, they're actually dangerous.
Yeah, I mean, Christian identities
because he's been mentioned in a lot. Yeah, and Christian identity's been mentioned in various manifestos linked to actual terrorists.
Has formed very like organized
terrorist groups. Like, I mean, historically, you look at
a big part of like with Christian identity and with a lot of these kind of like a lot of them base their like whole historical context of like Aryanism on this rewriting of history based on a fake study that was done in Nazi Germany about where some Proto-Indo-European languages came from. And so they believe that like white people came from an area that's, you could generally say is sort of near the Black Sea. And that it's based on this like strange idea that like Sanskrit is not the oldest language, but like, are you pointing the gun at me because I'm stepping in?
You're getting real close.
You're
getting real close.
Gun at me?
On the edge.
The historical context, I think it actually is useful, and it shows it's not. There is actual things that can be traced back from this.
Because they really tried to push this. They made a lot of fake studies that you could spend a lot of time researching this and believe that it's true because there's just so much written about it. And I think this is like a tactic that they really tend to do with historical revisionism a lot, is just crank out essay after essay, even if it's wrong, even if it's totally like based on false data or just skewed data.
Matter.
They don't care. They just write about it, and they think that like having more written about it makes it more legitimate.
And that's what we have been talking about this whole time we've been
not recording is there's just an overflow of content that is so easy to access, not necessarily from these specific groups they're talking about, just from the further right in general.
Oh, yeah.
They just overflow the content. It's like always the top shit on Facebook.
To give an idea of how pervasive even that idea of like where Indo-European languages came from, like when I still went to college, I took a Religions of South Asia course, and we had to spend like multiple days where our professor went through these myths about like what was the Aryan invasion, which like was there are Aryan people that is a thing historically.
They're Iranian.
Yes, they're not white people. But like going
Depends
through
on your definition of white people.
Sure.
But
whiteness
it's
is
based
relative.
on language. They think of Aryanism as like referring to a linguistic pattern.
Yeah, but like in a university course, we still had to go through and like debunk these myths because they've gotten so pervasive within culture.
Yeah, and another thing I want to say is that kind of these more entry-level conspiracy ideas, it is hard to overemphasize how small the space is between the entry-level stuff and the much harder stuff.
It can happen extremely quickly.
Extremely fast.
It does happen extremely fast.
I'll give an example. I went to, I was reporting on an anti-vax protest, and they went straight into talking about New World Order and Project Lockstep and the Rothschilds and the Bilderbergers and like the Sabatines and David Icke shit. Just immediately, and this was the middle of the day in like a metropolitan area with a bunch of boomers and Trump hats who are getting this like hardcore shit pumped at them.
Or we saw that a lot with the Nashville bombing too. Like immediately, it was like, oh, it was actually an attack on Dominion, and also it was orchestrated by the Rothschilds to destroy evidence of voter fraud.
I forgot that was a whole
Yeah,
thing.
and then also there was there was a bunch of stuff that came up. There was a big conspiracy that it was actually a missile strike. I had to talk my grandpa down from that.
Oh my, really?
Yeah,
I didn't know
there was
that
a video that circulated for a while about that, and I had to get into a conversation with my grandpa, who at the time was super isolated because of COVID, and that's a whole other story.
That's a whole other problem.
Yeah, and I had to like talk him down and show him like, no, here's a video from somebody I knew who was like somewhat in the area and saw the explosion and filmed it. Like, and there was not a missile anywhere near
One of the
Tennessee.
data studies I've done is and worked on is using big pool and small pool Discord servers of far right extremists, far right militia groups, and very, very like accelerationist skull mass type networks, and looking at the big pools and the small pools and seeing the @ mentions between them. And there was not one person who was more than 3 nodes away from anybody else. So it can't be overstated how close people are from entry to very, very, very extreme types of goals.
And
ideologies.
Explicit ideologies that explicitly push violence. And another point I want to bring up is there's been much said about QAnon. It isn't going away. It's just not called QAnon anymore. With these anti-vax mobilizations, those mobilizations and groups aren't going away. They're just going to continue to shift and evolve their focus. And
the networks stay.
The networks stick around.
And they're planning for it, though. They've designed it that way. So sometimes I find the normie stuff first. Sometimes I find the crazy stuff first. But, I mean, not even that long ago, I came across a particular social media profile that was explicitly calling for acts of terror and attempting to organize acts of terror and displaying acts of terror, which is, like, an immediate problem that needs to be dealt with. However, they had multiple alternate accounts that you follow that path, and on their other accounts, they're sharing, like, Tucker Carlson stuff. Things that your grandparents are going to watch, right? Like, and that is done on purpose to try to, like, siphon people out of more quote-unquote mainstream versions of, like, conspiratorial thinking directly into, like, you should start exploding things.
And even more, let's say, left of center conspiracy thinking ties into this as well.
It does.
And it's not, conspiracy theories are not solely a thing of the right, which pisses me off to no end. Sorry, Matt.
No, I just want to back you up on that. Like, I think there's this like implicit idea that the left is immune to conspiracy theories when it very much is not
true.
at all.
Nobody is immune.
Yeah, I just wanted to emphasize that point.
Yeah, I mean, that idea, though, of, like, never being that far from the serious stuff is something that's really, really observable, even beyond, like, a data level. I used to, like, consult with local newsrooms on how to report on things, and one of the big points I always tried to drill in was, like, if you fuck this up, and you frame this the wrong way, it will have consequences. And if this is stepping in it too much, we can cut this.
That's why we keep talking about stepping in it. This is literally the concept of stepping in it.
But, like, the Dylan Roof started his journey to radicalization by reading about Trayvon Martin in local news websites and local newspapers, and then Googling black on white crime. And his first result...
Yeah, the first shit that comes up.
Yeah, was
many people radicalized by the same exact thing.
Exactly. And, like, it did not take long for him to go from, I am reading local news articles that are framed this specific way, to, I am killing people.
Yep.
And that's not normal. Of course, like, a lot of people are not going to be reading local news and then suddenly start to think this way.
Exactly.
But, like, there is a concerted effort by some very specific people who would like to make that pathway easier.
Yeah. It's stochastic terrorism.
It's interesting because we can't like define it really as terrorism. What are they doing? They're really just they're just saying things. They're just encouraging people to do things. And like they're not doing anything wrong. We can't really call it terrorism.
Yeah, the most dangerous people in this game are usually not the ones doing the shooting.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
It's the people behind the scenes trying to get people to go on these paths in the first place.
Looking for people who are willing, and then so they see somebody reading local news maybe, and they want to make that pathway easier to go from local news to Dylan Roof, like, because that's not a normal jump.
No.
But they really want to find people who are looking at local news like that, and then say to them, like, well, okay, you look at this, now look at this.
So trying to tie this back to climate change, how do you see a similar pathway instead of someone Googling black and white crime, like Googling stuff about collapse and like modern civilization?
Oh yeah,
doing the same
Eric
thing.
Stryker. I don't know. Eric Stryker has been on about this, and I think that he's relatively like middle point that people get to, like fairly like average people do listen to things like Eric Stryker.
Yeah, he's a very
Blows my mind.
entry-level explicit Nazi.
Yeah.
And another thing, and cut me off if we don't want to go in this direction.
Uh-oh.
But, one of the biggest places where we see young people getting into conspiracy theories is TikTok.
It is TikTok.
Okay, that's where I'm
All
going.
right.
Yeah.
Are we talking about TikTok now?
TikTok.
Ted K memes on TikTok.
Cut that.
We're not cutting that. That is within the branches of the pod.
Yeah.
I mean, the biggest entry point that I've seen for a lot of things remains crisis.
Various
Flashpoint events.
And the thing is, our upcoming climate scenario is going to give people an easier jumping on point.
Well, yeah, that's so. I mean, we were talking about how like the mythology of like black on white crime and all this stuff. They're trying to create a situation that, with the sense of urgency that justifies fascism, which on its own is unjustifiable and ridiculous.
But when there's a crisis, that's when people sign on.
Climate change is the existential threat that they've been trying to artificially create, and they no longer have to. They now get to skip a lot of steps and save a lot of energy by just pointing at the fact that everything is literally on fire, and that makes it so much quicker. So we have to do something. We have all the guns. Now would be a great time to join in on our power grab.
This is our Weimar era hyperinflation type shit.
Yeah, I mean, this is like when you can't get food from the grocery store anymore because of supply chain problems, or when everything around you is on fire. You don't need a great replacement theory.
No, you don't need any of that.
You don't need to say that the Rothschilds are behind it. You have just need to wait.
You have enough things that you experience yourself,
and it's much scarier when you can't. Because I can't
how do we stop?
Yeah,
that?
I can't fucking debunk that. It's harder.
The world is literally on fire. It's a problem, and something needs to be done about it. I don't like your solution, but something needs to happen.
So what do you think on this path? And this is going to get a whole lot more speculative. But what can we do to make people falling down those pathways less often? What are
Quit
the
it with
things
the
that can
doomer
happen?
shit.
Yes. That is that's one of the things that we're trying to do on the pod is make sure that people do not fall down the doomer pathway. Because that does get people along down this path a lot.
Eco-extremism is logical. Against most types of extremism, eco-extremism is the most logical. Like, you look at it and you say, we need a radical change right now. And that's correct. It's just the way that they go about it is very, very different. And that's why, eco-fascism is very different. It's its own type of eco-extremism. And there's, in green anarchy, that's a very different type of eco-extremism. Like, these are all different parts of something that almost has the same goals, but wants to go about them very, very, very differently. And it's so easy to just look around and see how everything's on fire and think, the government's doing nothing about it. The government starts doing something about it, and then suddenly it's the state's too big, so we're in communism. So they all have, different goals, and it's very conflicting on how to deal with it.
Yeah, and even with the very different tactics between green anarchy and fascist eco-extremism, they also will get to different end goals, right? Your basic Amprim wants a very different life than your, very stepping in it pilled fascist, right?
But a collapse can only benefit the right. It can't. A collapse can only benefit the people who already have power, who are already able-bodied, who are already stocked up on guns, who already
that does frustrate me with there being anarchists who are rooting for the collapse, because you're not going to win.
You're not just going to get you put behind a fence somewhere.
You're not
going back
or
out.
Put on the wall.
Yes.
Yeah, well, they've got very strict ideas of which people count as human, and the goal of majority of fascist movements is to purge the ranks of the people they see as lesser, and they have very precise ideas about who they plan on letting survive the collapse.
All right. So let's. I think it's time to start talking about, and tell me if I'm taking this in the wrong direction. What the fuck can someone do who's listening to this?
Yeah.
Recycle.
No. Stop recycling. It's all getting
shorter showers.
It's all getting buried in the Oregon forest.
Talk to Joe Biden.
Just vote. Vote it away. Vote
it out.
The collapse away.
Let me.
What can you do?
Start local. Find a local group. Find a local direct action group.
Yes.
Investigate that group and see who is behind it, but start locally. It has to start at the local level, because I'm going to say if the collapse comes,
or not the collapse, but
a collapse,
local collapses.
Continuous disasters.
Continuous disasters are going to affect at the local level. No, talk to your fucking neighbors.
Talk to your family. Especially you try to get your family on these paths that lead to helping your neighbors instead of making friends with the church militia.
Before you buy a gun, learn how to fucking garden.
Yes.
Yeah.
But buying a gun and that sort of thing is good. It's good to know how to use firearms.
Basic emergency preparedness.
Yes, but learn how to put on a tourniquet.
Learn how to feed yourself.
Learn how to grow some fucking food. Learn how to cook that fucking food. Get an IFAC. All that comes before you get to be a Fallout character or something.
Oh yeah. Two big things.
First aid training.
Do you want to define IFAC?
Oh, yeah, an individual first aid kit. You can buy them online.
You can buy them in gun stores. You can buy them in some pawn shops. Yeah.
I like North American Rescue or North River Rescue.
I'm sure we'll talk about IFACs more in the pod.
Yeah. Well, there are two big things. One, we all have a moral obligation to consistently counter the black pill doomer shit. Everything is coming to an end. It doesn't have to. That's optional. We
things are going to get bad, but there's degrees of badness.
There's degrees of bad. We can stop it from being.
We don't need civilizational goals.
Right. We don't need civilization to end. That can be done. Step 2, we also have an obligation to counter the individualist stuff and focus our efforts more towards community and relationships. And that is so important, because every idiot that's going to buy a gun and have a bunker, not only is not going to make it, but it's going to screw the rest of us. This has to be a communal effort.
And on the civilization thing, we do need the civilization to change.
Yes.
We need human society, as we lay out, has a lot of problems. I understand people's critiques of human civilization.
But we also still need a society.
But yeah, we need places that, people are going to gather, and people, provide the things that we have. I noticed that can be a loaded word in certain political circles, so I'm not, we're not getting into, civilization theory and that kind of anything.
Yeah, I was going to say, I would argue any ideology or idea, such as the Boogaloo, that kind of hypes up a collapse is generally one you should stay away from. Anything that makes the collapse sound
Yes.
like a
Anything
like
that
a
makes
fun
it sound
product.
sexy.
And
It
then
does.
personal glory.
As I think it's important to remember, like if there was some massive civil conflict that happened, I think the people who would suffer the most are the non-combatants, the
As
people
we
who
will
don't
talk
want
about.
anything to deal with it. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
As we will talk about in an
yeah.
upcoming episode of Terrorism Bad.
We'll do plugs at the end. Put the gun back in your pants.
Hold yourself together.
I was talking about historical precedent earlier, about things we've seen in the past with collapses and how people with guns and people who with training end up being the ones who gain power. Something that like I was specifically reading about that was like the Rwandan genocide.
Yeah.
It was just 3 months where most of the Tutsi people were wiped out. There are conflicting numbers, so I'm not gonna specifically say any, but the more recently, like earlier this year, was only when Rwanda admitted what it was, that it was a genocide. And the armed forces were the ones who became, like, the leaders, and they were backed by the government.
Good
They
thing
were
that
backed
can't
by
happen in
the-
America.
Yeah, and it's like,
It can't happen here, though.
yeah.
Nope.
It cannot.
We are immune to this in our spot of the
podcast
world.
is called "It Will Not Happen Here."
Not if I can help it.
The other thing is, look at where you get your information from. Seriously, no matter who you are, take a long, hard look at who you get your information
Even
from.
if you're on the left, especially if you're on the left.
Especially if you're on the left. If you want to hear about something that's happening in an area, look at the people who are actually on the ground reporting
Local
that.
people.
Don't just rely on like news aggregators, especially on Twitter.
Yep.
Seriously.
Really bad.
Do not rely on Twitter.
There's
Get off
been
of
a
Twitter and
lot
fact
of
delete
bad,
your account.
very bad faith news aggregators on Twitter who are posing as leftists. This has been a huge problem in
And even
2020.
even leftists who just don't do their due diligence.
or just do a
Or
very
even
bad job.
People who call themselves like counter-extremism or counterterrorism researchers, and they are really talking about Antifa. They say that they are counter-extremism researchers, and they pose that way, and they look sometimes like they could be, sometimes like they're not, but like, varying degrees of like legitimacy, but like they focus only on like the left-wing stuff. They don't think about,
They don't see where the actual like mass
highlight.
threats are
Yeah.
coming from.
It has to be this idea of like keeping it balanced, right? Like not making it just like a far right issue, which
Yeah.
I would argue, I think a lot of other people would, that this kind of stuff is more concerning.
It is
No, I mean,
not
the
only,
stuff
it
they
is
do,
not
that's the
only a
wrong-
far right issue,
Yeah.
and there is like merit definitely to looking at
Sure.
left accelerationism
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
left, which is not
Acceleration
for
came
the-
from Marxism.
For the record, like left accelerationism is not talking about anti-fascists, but there's really not time to get into all
No,
that.
yeah.
This is a whole
But,
other
like,
thing.
I mean,
But it does.
Left accelerationism will be its own episode.
But what some people do, posing as, people who have credibility and are able to kind of sway opinion, they are not really doing what they say that they're doing. They're really just trying to shift the narrative of racially motivated violent extremism, which is a big, obviously,
A
issue
large
right now,
category.
to being like BLM is racially motivated violent extremism, and they want to push that narrative further and further.
I think, and let's kind of probably start to like wrap up and say our final thoughts on this whole topic. I know we did not get to talk about like eco defense very much. If anyone has any final thoughts on that, on how they see it kind of growing and how they see the state's response to it, that might be worth briefly mentioning. But yeah, let's kind of go around in a circle and give kind of everyone's final thoughts on the subjects.
I think collapse is bad, and I think that that's my main thing. But anything that's appealing to you on like an ecological level that's collapse related is something you should be very wary of, and I think you should be very wary of like generally everything. I feel like that's kind of like I butchered what I was
Yeah,
trying to say,
be careful about everything.
yeah.
Yeah, I guess, in my opinion, the idea of total collapse is very misleading because it's easy.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And disasters don't work like that.
Nope.
You're not going to suddenly reset one day. everything is going to suck, and you're going to need to fight for whatever semblance of a society that you want to see in the world.
Talk to your fucking neighbors. Get to know the people in your city, in your neighborhood. There are people doing good shit in whatever city, town you live in, most likely. If not, you can start it. Look at your local mutual aid network. Look at the people who are taking action around and get involved. Seriously, you know, it could be going out into a park Saturday mornings and just, like, giving out food and talking to the people who are most affected.
Talk to people.
Seriously.
Yeah, I mean,
everyone's a person you need to talk to.
Touch grass.
If you
Talk
need,
to
like,
people.
Yeah, if you need, like, the most basic thing to start on any sort of mutual aid work, try to find a Food Not Bombs chapter in your
Absolutely.
area.
Yes.
They're well organized. They're easy to join. You don't have to put on block and fight a cop. It's a good entry point.
And it's great. It's great training for disaster relief.
Yes.
If you have money and you want to help, seriously, just give cash to unhoused people on the street.
Give money to people.
Give money directly to people.
Yep.
My last thoughts are just that I think the idea of collapse, or whether actual collapse themselves, environmental or otherwise, will always be something to rally behind. Like, it is always an entry point as well as a motivator
for all sides.
From all sides. But it's like when these things become very salient, like was mentioned before, when they're outside of your door, that's when, like the ideology kind of hits the pavement. Like, what is actually going to play out, what is actually going to happen, and how that's going to affect people is very real. So building community, building connections, and just understanding, who is in your community is probably one of the most important things.
The idea of collapse is a romantic and ridiculous notion. Come up with people who are like really into like apocalyptic thinking and the version of themselves where they get to be the main character. So first and foremost, take care of each other. There are a lot of people out there who want to manipulate you and want to change the way you think about things, and they really, really want you to buy in to the end times, and you don't have to because you're smarter than that.
Yeah, it's not hopeless. We really have to move away from hierarchical thinking. Our society really incentivizes hierarchical thinking. And it's like you were saying, Toothpick, like we really need to just be focusing on people, like give things to people, because somebody doesn't have to earn respect and earn humanity. For some reason we try and make it seem like that, but people are people. People are in different circumstances usually because of just the way that the world is. And, you need to organize locally. You need to help your own people and stay away from the internet. Shit.
Stop posting.
Stop posting.
Stop posting stop posting, even though I will keep doing it because I'm the good poster. Who wants to plug the pod?
Which pod?
Your pod.
Our pod. Follow at Terrorism Bad. We're on. That's our app, right?
What is the pod? Like what do y'all do?
Yeah, we go through portrayals of terrorism and extremism and conspiracies in popular media, and we look at it from the perspective of people who study this and say, did this succeed in portraying these things, or did it, as it more often does,
cause problems,
completely fail and cause us all personal problems,
become propaganda and the like?
Did you make terror propaganda, or did you make good media about terror?
That is a thin line, Emmy.
It's such a thin line. I've made a career out of it.
That is the thin terror line.
Yeah.
Do you want to plug your fantastic group?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm with. You can read anything I write at antihate.ca, and we do just general reporting on far-right extremism in Canada, as well as infiltration. What?
Your podcast.
Oh, and I also host a podcast called The Unusual Show.
Yeah, if you want to keep up to date on extremism in Canada, their group is is probably the best one around right now, in my opinion.
Certainly the largest.
And the largest. And you do very good work. You keep your eye on my home country where my family lives. So thank you for that. And I'm very happy to be talking with you guys in the beautiful woods where we have no cell service, so we can't post. And that's good. And we're going to continue doing that and stop using this microphone. So goodbye. And Terrorism Bad, the podcast. With that wraps up the Terrorism Roundtable Forest discussion episodes. Thanks for listening to all of us
rant about our specific weird niche focuses and hopefully trying to have it within the useful context of climate change. You can follow me at Hungry Bowtie. You can follow the podcast, Happen Here Pod and Cool Zone Media on Twitter and I believe Instagram. You can follow some of the researchers I interviewed on their podcast at Terrorism Bad. So that wraps up this discussion. Thanks for listening. See you later in the podcasting verse, the podverse. Okay, goodbye.
This is Jana Kramer from Wind Down with Jana Kramer. We talk a lot about cutting out toxicity in our lives, habits, jobs, relationships, but what about our skincare? So many of these anti-aging companies out there actually hide hundreds of chemicals under the term fragrance, exposing us to harmful carcinogens that actually break down your skin's protective barrier. Foria Organics is a Scandinavian skincare company that does things differently. They believe in healing skin at a microbial level, not just cheap fillers. They use wild harvested Arctic botanicals like arnica and sea buckthorn. These plants survive extremely harsh winters, making them super resilient and hyper packed with nutrients. They work with your skin to lock in moisture, boost collagen, and even repair your skin barrier, giving your skin a healthy radiance you can literally see and feel. And it actually works. 92% of users reported seeing less wrinkles and fine lines in just 4 weeks. It's time to stop using harsh chemicals and switch to natural ingredients that give your skin what it needs most. Go and check out ForiaOrganics.com today and get 40% off your order.
In 2023, a story gripped the UK, evoking horror and disbelief.
The nurse who should have been in charge of caring for tiny babies is now the most prolific child killer in modern British history.
Everyone thought they knew how it ended. A verdict, a villain, a nurse named Lucy Letby.
Lucy Letby has been found guilty.
But what if we didn't get the whole story?
The moment you look at the whole picture, the case collapses.
I'm Amanda Knox, and in the new podcast, Doubt, the Case of Lucy Letby, we follow the evidence and hear from the people that lived it to ask what really happened when the world decided who Lucy Letby was.
No voicing of any skepticism or doubt.
It'll cause so much harm at every single level of the British establishment of this is wrong.
Listen to Doubt, the Case of Lucy Letby on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hi, this is Jill Winterstein, host of the Spirit Daughter podcast, where we talk about astrology, natal charts, and how to step into your most vibrant life. And I just sat down with a Minnie Driver.
The Irish traveller said when I was 16, you're going to have a terrible time with men.
Actor, storyteller, and unapologetic Aquarian visionary. Aquarius is all about freedom loving and different perspectives. And I find a lot of people with strong placements in Aquarius are misunderstood. A Sun and Venus in Aquarius in her 7th house spark her unconventional approach to partnership.
He really has taught me to embrace people sleeping in different rooms, on different houses, in different places, but just an embracing of the isness of it all.
If you're navigating your own transformation or just want a chart side view into how a leading artist integrates astrology, creativity, and real life, this episode is a must listen. Listen to the Spirit Daughter podcast starting on February 24th on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your podcasts.
I'm Clayton Eckerd, and in 2022, I was the lead of ABC's The Bachelor.
Unfortunately, it didn't go according to plan. He became the first bachelor to ever have his final rose rejected. The internet turned on him.
If I could press a button and rewind it all, I would.
But what happened to Clayton after the show made even bigger headlines. It began as a one-night stand and ended in a courtroom, with Clayton at the center of a very strange paternity scandal.
The media is here. This case has gone viral.
The dating contract.
Agree to date me, but I'm also suing you.
Police search warrant.
This is unlike anything I've ever seen before.
I'm Stephanie Young. This is Love Trapped. This season, an epic battle of he said, she said, and the search for accountability in a sea of lies.
I have done nothing except get pregnant by the Bachelor!
Listen to Love Trapped on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
What's a problem, me? I'm a problem.
Welcome to
So
It Could
they-
Happen Here.
The show where I'm a problem. I'm on vacation legally.
You're not
Allegedly.
on vacation, allegedly, legally, but okay.
Inshallah. I'm drunk. Garrison, you're in charge now. Figure it out.
Great.
Garrison.
Hi, it could happen here. Today we are talking with somebody. If you've listened to the past 2 episodes, you should actually know Theo, who is a journalist and researcher, and we are going to be discussing plans for an upcoming rally in Washington D.C. Has a lot of.
Oh, that
people-
seems good.
Yeah, this is
It seems like bad things never happen when
what
people
happened
rally in DC.
What happened last time? What happened
Now,
last
Garrison,
time they did this?
I historically only pay attention to things that happen after May and before December. So I'm unaware of anything bad ever happening in DC.
Well,
Has bad stuff happened there? You want to key us in?
Last time it got a little spicy.
Okay, you say spicy, but it's not like they tried to overthrow the government and murder elected leaders, right?
That is what
People
they
were
actually.
just having too much fun.
Yeah, they
they were just boys. They were just proud of their boys.
A little carried away building that big hanging contraption, whatever it's called. I
The
don't know.
gallows, Garrison.
The gallows, yeah. Anyway, we're talking. Theo, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah. Hey guys, I'm Theo. I'm
Hi,
a
Theo.
journalist and a researcher. I'm based out of Virginia, allegedly.
Allegedly.
I end up covering a lot of events in DC because of that, and
Yeah.
that's my plans for this weekend.
Cool.
Yeah. Do you want to give us like an overview of what rallies in DC have been like the past year?
Oh boy, do I.
Yeah. Let's
Has it been good?
Just for background.
Yeah, so like pretty much immediately post-election, as the whole kind of stop the steal thing got kicked into gear, November 14th, there was a rally in DC, and then there was one December 12th, and then there was finally one, as most people are probably aware, on January 6th.
Yup.
January 6th, obviously got the bulk of the media coverage, but November 14th and especially December 12th were very violent situations in general. Proud Boys, General Chuds, a bunch of Oath Keepers. And
Yeah. 3%ers.
A bunch of people's confused Meemaws and Pap Paps showed up, would kind of wander
someone
around the
died.
city. Yeah, they did.
Yeah.
Um,
It's pretty fucked up. I know some people who were there when they did, and it's I don't know, it's sad. Like
Super dark.
Yeah,
it's really
I think
bleak.
I was there with the people that
Yeah.
Robert.
Oh, good. Yeah, so it's so fucking I don't know, the extent of the disinformation, right? It's hard when you're talking about this to like express a lot of sympathy for some of these people. And I'm not sympathetic towards their aims. I'm not trying to do the New York Times, like, let's talk to the Trump voter down the street. But, like, a lot of them are just, like, they're fucking dumb people who bought into some bullshit. And it destroyed them. And their relationships with their families, and in some cases cost them their lives. And, like, you don't have to sympathize with them to be like, yeah, that's bleak as shit. You know?
Yeah, and I think you
Yeah.
see that with the DC rallies really more so than like a Portland Proud Boy event, for example.
That is not at all a gathering of like the masses. That's a specific
Yeah.
group of pieces of shit. Yeah.
Yeah, and like you'd have
Yeah, absolutely.
like units of Proud Boys or Oath Keepers. We had 3%ers, some local Virginia militias, and they'd kind of be wandering around. But during the day itself, you'd normally see like speakers. Alex Jones was there. Got to meet him. That was fun.
Oh, good.
and-
Oh, that's always a treasure meeting Alex. No, Alex is a great guy.
He
We
shook
all
my
love meeting
hand.
Alex.
It was really fun.
His neck. It's hard to exaggerate how
He is
thick his
just
neck
as red
is.
in person.
He's so red, and as a guy who's good at strangling, seems like he would be hard to strangle.
Oh, nearly impossible.
Yeah, like that's so big. It's such like It's like a fucking train car. Like, it's ridiculous how big that man's neck is. Look, most people aren't hard to strangle. Alex Jones would be. That's not praising him. That's just being honest.
Great.
Yeah, so during the day, there would be speakers, Alex Jones, and you'd kind of see people split up into whatever their specific brand of fuckery is. There's like groups of nerdy looking groypers. There were some trad cats wearing robes. Those guys were fun.
God damn it.
But yeah, a lot of it's, confused like boomers on Facebook. And kind of to Robert's point, like I normally didn't go, wearing press credentials because I value knives being outside of me and not inside of me.
Yeah, it's good to not get stabbed. Most people appreciate that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite things. And so I'd get to like talking to these people, especially the older ones, because I take the metro into the city, and they are, they're just confused old people who've gotten in over their heads. But yeah, and then like the sun would set, and that's when the Proud Boys would really start getting into shit. November 14th, they stabbed, I don't know if I'm remembering this correctly, so feel free to fact check me, but I believe it was 2 people on the 14th. They cracked a girl's skull, and then on December 12th, they stabbed one other person, and Jeremy Bertino got filleted on the street.
He sure did. He sure did. And the fucking DA elected not to prosecute because that was the clearest case of self-defense I have ever seen in my life.
Yeah. So like
the dude literally tried to flee 3 times. He drew his knife after by the 3rd time he was blinded by having his shirt pulled and assaulted by a group. He had no other choice. Yeah.
Yeah, he did exactly what you're supposed to do in that situation.
Yeah.
And
he repeatedly tried to flee, and when he didn't, he stabbed a motherfucker. And you can't, I can't, he did nothing wrong, in my opinion, the DA's opinion. Yeah. Yeah.
We're all probably better off for it. But yeah, there's this kind of established, there was this established sort of cycle of show up, a bunch of weird Republican politicians that you never heard of before give speeches. You go and kind of wander around, and then the Proud Boys come out and they fuck around. And sometimes other groups too. Like the night before January 6th, there were people from NSC 131 who were hanging out, trying to cause trouble, getting in altercations, all their normal shit. And so yeah, there's this kind of like general mix of groups. January 6th shifted the paradigm on that a lot, and I think that's the big thing for this weekend, is we don't really know what it's going to look like.
Yeah, can you talk about kind of what has kind of the event promotion looked like from the right? Like, what messages have they been putting out to promote this event with?
So, yeah, a lot of, like, the bigger groups have been fairly explicitly saying, like, don't go. Officially. Unofficially is a bit of a different story.
And in fairness, it's worth noting that prior to the Unite the rally in Charlottesville, the Proud Boys were saying don't go, and an awful lot of their most violent members were at Unite the Right in Charlottesville. Some of this is a plausible deniability game.
Yeah, so like the official Proud Boys Telegram channel was like, oh, this is, in different words, but we're pretty much like, this is a honeypot, this is a trap, this is an op, don't go. But also, like, we've seen activity that really suggests otherwise.
Yeah.
Whether it's, like, smaller, more local groups saying that they want to go, or streamers and journalists, using the word lightly, to who have pretty close relationships with these groups, hiring extra stringers for the weekend, or looking like they're preparing to report on something big.
Yeah, I know we've talked a little bit online and with some of our colleagues, and there's definitely a mixed opinion on how big the event's going to be and who's all going to be there and what kind of their goal is, which makes kind of everything all the more tense, because it's almost easier to when we know what it's going to be, like we have a good grasp of what's going to happen, and this we're not really sure. Do you know, has there been any kind of response from like local DC officials, like law enforcement or anything, about what they're going to do at this gathering?
So I did see Capitol Police is planning to put the fence back up.
Probably a good idea, yeah.
Yeah, which, like, will cover the Capitol, but there's also a problem with the fence going up, which is the back of the fence goes right up to the end of the Black Lives Matter Plaza in DC, which has been used as kind of a rallying point for anti-fascist activists, and when that fence is up, it's a funnel. So it goes like, this isn't a visual medium. There's a street, and that's where Black Lives Matter Plaza is, and there's only 2 exits. And both those exits lead to hotels that Proud Boys and Chuds love to stay in. So what happens almost without fail is people go and hang out in the plaza. You know, Chuds come down the streets, police form a line, and it's pretty much a pre-made kettle.
Right.
So that's, like, not good. It's good for the Capitol, but it's not good for the people that'll be on the ground.
Yeah, because they're also, as is most of these events, there's been some organizing locally, and even, anti-fascists from around kind of the country trying to, like, put out advice and feelers on, like, what to do for this specific gathering. And I know there's been a decent amount of, there's always, like, debate and conflict around how much to show up, where to show up, how proactive people should be. But because this is the first big rally since J6, I feel like there's a lot of people feel it's much more important, and like people have like there's like a heightened sense around this specific thing. Do you know like how many people are kind of roughly planning to show up on like the anti-fascist side?
It's really hard to tell. DC anti-fascist actions, I've seen a couple dozen people in block. Towards close to 100. I would, from what I've heard, the kind of main counter demo that's happening is definitely less radical and is kind of trying to establish sort of a community space thing. So I would say, I don't know, expect around 40 to 50 like people who are there to throw hands.
Yeah.
And a lot more people who are just kind of there.
I mean, it's this thing we saw. I was in DC for Unite the Right 2, the second rally, and it didn't turn into much of a thing. I think because of the preparation, the expectation, and I guess I'm interested in if you think I'm wrong on this, but my current expectation is that maybe that might be the most likely outcome because of the degree of the unexpected event already occurred and was awful. I'm not expecting anyone will be given free leash,
Yeah, I could definitely see that sort of Unite the Right 2 scenario playing out, especially because it is very similar. Like there was this massive, shocking event that kind of
hit the whole nation,
everyone's attention. Yeah. And so then people will... I think the only big difference is, like, in the aftermath of Unite the Right, you kind of saw, at times, a misguided media focus, but still a media focus on anti-fascist activists as playing a unique role when you didn't have that for January 6th. And I think that's really one of my bigger worries, is less so kind of clashes between Chuds and anti-fascists, which is still, I mean, that's always a thing that may happen. But also, like, you have to think, these Chuds that are coming, when they look at DC police, they see the people who killed Ashley Babbitt. When the DC police look at these Chuds, they're the people who beat one of their coworkers to death. And like there's Capitol Police, not same as DC Metro Police, but like in the minds of both these groups, that doesn't really matter. And I worry about the tension there. I don't care if they mace each other, if the Proud Boys and cops mace each other, then that's a great day for me. But if it escalates further, and, we're seeing that more and more. The past two kind of major right-wing rallies in the Pacific Northwest have had shots fired.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah, one of which
every
entailed-
recent PNW protest has involved gunfire.
Yeah, and like the August 22nd one had, I guess you could call it a legitimate exchange of
brief
fire.
exchange, yeah.
Yeah, a casual gunfight.
I mean, the start of it was not legitimate. The right winger who fired was not legitimate. But the two people on the left who responded were doing so in self-defense. Now,
right,
what happened a couple of weeks later from the video that's come out was not self-defense. It was a guy shooting at somebody, pursuing them from like 50 feet back. You know, it was not legally what you would call self-defense for certain.
Yeah, and that kind of, the precedent that set, which I think it's happened few enough times that we can't really say that it's the norm or anything like that, but it's an escalation. It's something
absolutely.
That is, like if that had happened in 2017 when Unite the Right happened, like that would have been unprecedented.
It's very frightening, you know? It should be. It doesn't matter what you think about the morality of shooting tiny, you know, or whatever. Exchanges of fire becoming more common is a threat to everybody, and it is something that should concern everybody.
Yeah, I mean, it reminds me a lot of, and this was kind of the impetus of the first season of It Could Happen Here, but like the early days of something like the Syrian Civil War, where it went from protests to exchanges of gunfire to, you know, what it is now.
Yeah.
Do you think DC's specific gun laws will make gunfire in DC a little bit less likely, do you think? Or I know, like, still, like, the police always have that capacity if they feel, you know, if they choose to, but more specific on, like, the right between people, I don't know, it's like, you know, boogs are going to show up or whatever. What kind of talk do you see around firearms?
So,
yeah,
kind of just from experience, I think my worry with DC's gun laws is only one side will be armed. Every time that Chuds come to DC, I mean, they are obviously carrying. I mean, every single one of them is printing. You can tell that they have firearms on them. They don't really try to hide it, and none of them have ever, I mean, I guess apart from Tario getting arrested for illegal magazines, like, none of them have really faced any consequences for that. And the general fear among people on the left is, well, even if I do come and I carry for self-defense, if I get arrested for something unrelated, that'll enhance whatever charges I get.
Yeah. No, it's sketchy, and it's I'm not convinced in the situation DC is in specifically that showing up with a fucking firearm is the right call. You know, I'm not in this business to lecture people, but I'm not convinced that's going to help. In the Pacific Northwest, we've seen situations where people with weapons, as on the 22nd, defended themselves and others, and we've seen situations in which people on the with weapons on the left escalated things. So it's never a zero-sum game. You know, it's not a simple issue.
Right.
A gun
yeah,
is a neutral tool. You know.
Yeah, and I don't want it to come off like I'm encouraging, you know, every person in block to show up with a long gun.
Good
or anything
Lord,
like
no.
that.
No, absolutely
because that
not.
would be a fucking disaster, most likely. But also, like, I don't like the idea of, you know, looking at a line of Proud Boys or something and knowing every single one of these people has a gun, and I do not. That's kind of like
absolutely.
an imbalance of force that I don't like if things do escalate.
Yeah. No, that's completely reasonable, in my opinion.
But yeah, I mean, I think the big thing is just there's so many unknowns. You know, we've never really, there's not much of a historical precedent for group tries to overthrow the government, group shows back up in DC months later, or elements of the same kind of ideology. And yeah, we just don't know. I mean, even like, I think the Unite the Right 2 example is similar, but also like markedly different enough that I don't know if it's an all-encompassing tool for like, this is what it's going to look like.
Yeah, is there any like specific players that you know is going to show up or have like said that they're going to show up?
So one that I kind of worry about is I'm going to get fucking tweets for this. God damn it. So there's a group in Virginia that you may have heard of, BLM 757.
Oh god, these guys. No, yeah, I know who you're talking about. Yeah.
They are based out of the Virginia Beach area, and they are the biggest pain in the ass ever. They claim to be a Black Lives Matter organization. The local Black Lives Matter organizations have denounced them. They work with Boogaloo Boys. They were very tight with Mike Dunn before he snitched and dropped off the face of the earth.
Snitched on people, yeah.
And then, yeah, they come, and I don't like the idea of them coming to a town that is not familiar with them, because, like, they come to Richmond, for example, and people are like, oh, there's BLM 757, we don't fuck with them. But they come to a town, or groups like this, like NFAC, the Not Fucking Around Coalition, tried to come to DC, and these groups that are going to be armed, are going to want to escalate, and are going to kind of try to slide in to like a counter demo or stick around like the more left-leaning parts of the crowd, and then could very quickly escalate things. So they're one that I'm worried about. Some local Virginia militia movement players have been chatting about it. I haven't seen really that much in the way of like definitive statements that they're going to go. And those guys don't really worry me. They're a bunch of nerds who like to play dress up in the woods mostly. But yeah, it's just like these kind of unknowns.
Yeah, so just like not knowing who's going to show up and what they're going to do and where they'll be, and yeah.
Yeah, like, and this was a thing definitely. It reminds me a lot of the first Stop the Steal rally, where we had more concrete groups saying we're going to be there. There was a lot more chatter about it on social media, but it was still kind of like, I don't know like what range of the sort of right-wing ideological spectrum will be here. Like, I know, QAnon, your QAnon uncle will be there, but like, for example, on November 14th, Jason Kessler was there, the organizer of Unite the Right. I literally bumped into Jason Kessler.
Oh, God.
Like, I was walking and my shoulder hit him, and I looked up and I was like, oh, sorry, dude. And then I just kind of stopped and I was like, oh, shit. I recognize you.
Yeah, you're that famous piece of shit.
Yeah. But yeah, so like, it's kind of that same thing where we really just don't have that much intel, and it seems like people with access to more streams of information than us, like the feds have been saying for I guess a couple months now, like, we're monitoring this situation, we're like preparing to stop another January 6th, which, take it with a grain of salt, it is the feds, but also like part of me, a lot of the worry I get from this is people that I know more than I do reacting to it. Like Chud streamers hiring stringers, feds saying, like, announcing months before that it's a situation that they're preparing for.
A lot of people are very interested in what's going to happen. I think people are definitely preparing for a lot of different outcomes. And that makes any kind of resistance to it hard, because you don't know if you're over preparing, under preparing. You don't know if you'll have what you'll
if your
need.
Preparations are too aggressive or not aggressive enough. Yeah.
Yeah, and always trying to feel it out once you're there is more scary, because once you're there in person, a lot of communications break down between other activists. So that's what happened in like the last big rally in Portland, is people tried to change up plans once they got to the spot, and it kind of made everything a lot more challenging, because it's hard to a lot of people in block don't have their phone on them. it's hard to get rides. Any kind of impromptu organizing at the site, it's always going to be way more challenging than trying to figure this stuff out at home. And yeah, that's just kind of, I don't know. I think the Unite the Right 2 background is useful for like a big event after a previous event that had a lot of coverage and had a lot of talk about it, because it had a disastrous outcome. And then I think looking at November 14th and December 10th are also kind of valuable indicators. Have you seen anything around the Groypers or like any of the Fuentes crew showing up to this, or are they trying to like keep good optics, I guess?
As far as I've seen, they're mostly trying to keep good optics around this.
That makes sense.
They also kind of fall into the category of like people I'm not super worried about. Like some of them, yeah, but in like a street fight situation.
In a street fight, less so. Yeah,
I'm not worried about a Groyper.
Yeah,
like the most violent encounter I've ever had with a Groyper was one that was probably 5 feet tall, following me around and calling me a soy boy for 30 minutes.
Yeah, what I'm more concerned about is Groypers kind of following the incel terrorism tradition of skinny white guys getting access to weapons and then doing something. They're not going to.
Any man with a gun is dangerous. Yeah.
Yeah, like they're not going to beat you.
It is. Yeah.
Yeah, here, finish what you were saying, Garrison.
Yeah, I'm just saying, like, all of the Groypers I've seen, they're not going to beat me in a fist fight because they're all even more.
They're not.
Even more lanky than I am.
I was going to say because you're fast as shit, but yeah.
And that, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's kind of another thing that's, it's always a possibility, these things. Like, I always say, like, the worst possible outcome is someone starts shooting. Like, a firefight is always the worst way this could go. But with the sort of optics surrounding this, I think there's definitely space for more extreme people, specifically more accelerationist-minded people, to try to start something, to try to cause some shit. I mean, like I said, I'm in Virginia. I think of the Richmond gun rally or lobby day in, what was that, 2019? Beginning of 2020. I forget. All time is a flat circle to me now. But the members of the base that were intercepted on their way to Richmond. I think about that situation and how other people and other groups that we will not talk about on pod could see an opportunity here.
Yeah, and I think that's more likely happening in somewhere like DC than it is in Portland, right? Because in Portland we have a pretty good grip on who shows up and why they show up. The East Coast, the South, Northeast, Southeast, they have a lot more groups with interest, with obscure ideologies that are more prone to those types of like more insurgent attacks than I think people are on the West Coast.
Yeah, and I think another thing that kind of amplifies that is, like you said, like Portland has kind of an established infrastructure of chud fuckery.
Sure do.
I mean, I'm on the other side of the country and I know the familiar faces of Portland bullshit. And we do have that to an extent, but DC brings people from all across the country. I was meeting people on the metro from everywhere from Tennessee to Kansas to California. And when people are coming in from such a broad range of places, there's a lot more uncertainty.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure. And anything else you want to mention about kind of what you expect at this rally and any, general advice since you've been at the past 3 versions?
Yeah, so, I mean, if you're in the DC area or you're nearby and you're comfortable with it and physically able to do so, show up. The one thing that we do know for sure about these events is that the more bodies we have, the less likely it is for people to be able to prey on someone walking home from work or a houseless person just trying to sleep.
Yeah.
The more bodies that we have, the better it is. If you are either unable to come or you don't feel comfortable coming, I know that there will be jail support, mutual aid efforts, and Garrison, I can send you to some links to local DC orgs if you want to throw it in the show notes.
Sure.
But yeah, and if you're gonna go, be prepared. Have a buddy, block up, bring an IFAC, and get ready to party.
Yeah, I think it's one of the things you mentioned is like more numbers helps in the case of it's less likely there'll be like roaming attacks, because that's what we've seen at a lot of these rallies is that sometimes they don't ever like actually cause trouble at where people are, like where the people are. They wait until people are walking away or going back to their car. Mm-hmm. Or if there's no one like that, they just find some random person on the street. We saw a lot of that in DC of Proud Boys just finding kind of people in the area that they thought looked like Antifa, quote unquote, and then just attacking them. So, the less scattered people are, the less likely you'll get kind of those roaming attacks. Yeah, I mean, it's always hard to speculate on an event that hasn't happened yet, but I believe by the time this airs, it'll be happening tomorrow. So Saturday. Theo, do you want to plug anything?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Theo Hansen, Theo with a 0. Listen to my podcast, Terrorism Bad. We look through portrayals of terrorism and extremism in popular media, see how it holds up to the real world. Trying to think of anything else. I'll be there on Saturday. I'll be live tweeting the event.
Good luck.
If I'm not live tweeting, I'm
good luck with that.
Dead or otherwise incapacitated, or I don't have cell service. One of the
cell
three.
Service is always horrible at these things.
Oh, it's awful.
Yeah, it's a constant problem.
Yeah, they were blocking signals on January 6th on the Capitol lawn, and when I stepped off, I had like 13 texts from all my friends that were like, "Hey, text me if you're still alive."
It's really hard to tell what's going on. When you're like whether or not it's like a cell signal problem or if it's somebody like targeting you in particular. It's frustrating.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, Theo. Thank you for giving us the rundown on Saturday's activities. I hope you don't get shot.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I hope I do not as well.
That's my general feeling towards anyone who shows up on the 18th in DC. I hope you don't get shot. Do your best.
Yeah, and if you do get shot, know what to do about it.
Well, yeah, have an IFAC,
have a
tourniquet. Have some cell locks. Yeah, that's ideal. But not getting shot is better. So
yes,
you cannot
rule number
get shot.
one.
Try not to get shot.
Yeah. All right. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Thanks.
Nice to meet you,
Yeah,
Robert and Sophie.
Nice to meet you. You can
Bye, guys.
follow us at Happen Here Pod on Twitter and Instagram and at Cool Zone Media for all the things, and we'll be back Monday.
Hey, we'll be back Monday with more episodes every week from now until the heat death of the universe.
It Could Happen Here is a production of Cool Zone Media. For more podcasts from Cool Zone Media, visit our website, coolzonemedia.com, or check us out on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts. You can find sources for It Could Happen Here updated monthly at coolzonemedia.com/sources. Thanks for listening.
This is Jana Kramer from Wind Down with Jana Kramer. We talk a lot about cutting out toxicity in our lives, but what about our skincare? So many of these anti-aging companies hide hundreds of chemicals under the term fragrance, exposing us to harmful carcinogens that actually damage our skin. Foria Organics is completely different. They use natural Arctic ingredients like arnica that lock in moisture, boost collagen, and repair your skin's protective barrier, giving you a radiant natural glow at any age. Stop using harsh products that work against your skin instead of with it. Visit ForiaOrganics.com today.
Hi, it's Jill Winterstein, host of the Spirit Daughter podcast, where we talk about astrology, natal charts, and how to step into your most vibrant life. And today I'm talking with my dear friend, Krista Williams.
It can change you in the best way possible. Dance with the change, dance with the breakdowns.
The embodiment of Pisces intuition with Capricorn power moves.
So I'm like delusionally proud of my chart.
Listen to the Spirit Daughter podcast starting on February 24th on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your podcasts.
I'm Clayton Echard. In 2022, I was the lead of ABC's The Bachelor.
But here's the thing. Bachelor fans hated him.
If I could press a button and rewind it all, I would.
That's when his life took a disturbing turn. A one-night stand would end in a courtroom.
The media is here. This case has gone viral.
The dating contract.
Agree to date me, but I'm also suing you.
This is unlike anything I've ever seen before.
I'm Stephanie Young. Listen to Love Trapped on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
1969, Malcolm and Martin are gone. America is in crisis. And at Morehouse College, the students make their move.
These students, including a young Samuel L. Jackson, locked up the members of the Board of Trustees, including Martin Luther King Sr. It's the true story of protest and rebellion in Black American history that you'll never forget. I'm Hans Charles.
I'm Menelik Lumumba.
Listen to The A Building on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed Human.